I thought my life was perfect. A dream trip turned into a nightmare when I was framed and jailed in a foreign hellhole. For 15 months I endured hell, clinging to the hope of seeing my wife again. But when I returned, I found her in the arms of another man. "I divorced you?" she coldly said. My world shattered, but I had a plan. A cruel, merciless revenge that would make her regret every lie, every betrayal. This is my story of survival, betrayal, and the brutal revenge that turned her life upside down. Another bump in my back. Ouch! These seats must have been made by someone having a really bad day. Even a bucket turned upside down would feel better. It wouldn't have been so hard if the driver didn't think it was his job to hit every pothole on this terrible road. If you could even call this muddy path a road, the heavy woman next to me was still asleep, which was surprising. Sure, she had some extra padding to help absorb the bumps, but I was barely hanging on to my seat. Sleep? Not a chance. I envied her, but her weight was slowly pushing me towards the aisle, almost making me fall off the seat. At least her head wasn't resting on my shoulder anymore. I glanced over at the aisle. It was still taken by a bunch of noisy chickens. I really didn't want to land on those chickens, especially since their creepy owner across the way was staring at me like I was in trouble. With every bump, the bus creaked and groaned. I started to think that maybe if it broke down, it would be a quick end to this nightmare. Anything to stop this suffering would be nice. Even a little accident might feel better. My sweat mixed with dirt was stinging my eyes, and I had given up trying to wipe my forehead since my sleeves were soaked anyway. The bumps were annoying, the view was terrible, the noise was getting on my nerves, but the worst part was the smell. The bus was packed full and it was so hot. Most of the passengers looked like farmers, and after a long day in the fields, you could see why they might not smell too fresh. The mix of odors felt thick enough to cut with a knife. As bad as all this was, one thing made it even harder to bear. I chose to be here. I even paid for this ride. I had dreams of backpacking in an exciting tropical land, tasting new foods before I got too old to travel and had to think about settling down. Christine had told me I was foolish, that my cooking dreams were pointless, that I needed to grow up and get a real job, that this trip was a waste of money and she was not coming with me. Period. Sadly, this was not the amazing trip I had hoped for. It hurt to say it, but she was partly right. Sure, the tropical jungle I had always wanted to see was right outside the fogged window. At first, I couldn't get enough of it. I loved the smells, the plants, and the animals. I couldn't understand why the locals seemed to ignore the beautiful nature around them. But after a few weeks and some bad experiences with the local wildlife, the jungle now felt scary, hot, and travel was uncomfortable. I had wanted to connect with the local people. Well, at that moment, I was indeed connecting with a very large local person whose weight was pushing me off my seat. I had to admit, compared to my torture seat and the mass of flesh beside me, even the chickens looked pretty cozy, weird owner or not. On the bright side, I had really improved my cooking skills. It was amazing how much these countries had to offer that people didn't know back home. Even though the rest of the trip had been rough, this new knowledge made it more bearable. Still, I couldn't wait for the bus to finally stop. To my surprise, it did. I looked around, confused. This was not the ancient temple city I wanted to visit. All I saw was jungle and some scared locals staring at me. The driver got up, opened the squeaky front door, and stepped aside quickly. I expected to see some farmers wanting to board. Instead, men in green uniforms walked in. I could never tell if they were military or police. I had dealt with both before, and it usually ended with a little bribe changing hands. These men looked much more serious than the rough groups I had seen before. Their uniforms were neat and tidy. They scanned the worried passengers on both sides of the aisle. It was actually quite interesting. As a Westerner, I felt like an invisible observer of whatever was about to happen. I thought about taking out my phone to snap some interesting photos for my social media. This was the reason I didn't choose one of those boring, all-inclusive trips like Christine suggested. I was young and I wanted to see other countries, raw and unfiltered. The men made their way down the packed aisle, trying to step over the scared chickens and a little pig that was wandering around the bus. Their leader suddenly turned to me and smiled. Everyone around me seemed to relax. What? Seriously? Whatever was going on here, I thought I could stay out of it. I was just a tourist. He pointed right at me and said something to his friends. Wait, this didn't look good. I wanted to learn about the local culture, but maybe not this up close. He pointed at me again in motion for me to come closer. I don't know if it was his authority or the weapon he was holding, but I stood up like a puppet on a string. He pointed at the flimsy overhead rack that held everyone's bags. I understood and grabbed my backpack. I felt a little scared, but still hoped that as a tourist I would be safe. I hoped that once this messy situation was sorted out, I could find a way to get a better ride to where I needed to go. As I stepped off the bus, I saw people looking at me with pity. They stared at me like I was on my way to my last day. You haven't done anything wrong. You're just a tourist. I told myself, trying to feel better. I thought if I acted calm, maybe no one would bother me. It was important to show that I wasn't scared. At moments after I got off the bus, the driver quickly shut the door. The bus roared to life and zoomed away as if it was trying to escape from something scary. This was not a good sign. Listen. I began to speak, but before I could finish, someone hit me in the stomach. The leader of the group stood there grinning and waited for me to catch my breath before he pointed at my backpack. What was going on? They wanted something from my backpack. The only things of value were my phone and a little cash. They could take those. I just wanted to get away from this mess. Right then, I wished I could leave this country forever. I missed Christine and home so much. I even thought she might have been right about how bad this trip was. The leader spoke in a language I didn't understand and waved for me to empty my backpack. One of his buddies was filming the whole thing with his phone, which worried me. This didn't seem like it was just about taking my stuff. I had nothing to hide, so I slowly took out my things and laid them on the muddy ground. I pulled out my t-shirts, 2 pairs of jeans, an extra pair of shoes, some powder and plastic, and a few clean pairs of socks. Wait, what was that powder? I knew my backpack well, and I had never seen that before. Feeling foolish, I pointed at it and said, "Wait, I've never seen this before." Of course they wouldn't believe me. They were not going to apologize and let me go. I knew about the strict drug laws in this country. I had heard stories of tourists being made to carry drugs without knowing. That was just a theory. Until now. I let them cuff my hands behind my back and accepted their smug looks as they led me to an old Jeep. I felt helpless, knowing there was nothing I could do. The small room they put me in was dark with no window, tucked away at the end of a long hall. The walls used to be red, but now they were dirty and covered in grime. It was hot everywhere, but this part felt like an oven. A not-so-friendly guard had pushed me inside. They had been rough with me since they pulled me off the bus. I had seen a few local police stations, each one worse than the last. The police had gone through my things, which now were just what I was wearing. They yelled at me in a language I didn't understand. I didn't respond, but they didn't care. They hit me, shoved me around, and treated me badly. My desire to experience the local culture had completely vanished. Now, in this grimy cell, I was alone for the first time. I felt some relief as the heavy door locked behind me. For a moment, I could think about what happened, something I hadn't been able to do while being mistreated. I figured out that I had been framed. Nobody would believe I was innocent even if they understood me. I was in serious trouble. I didn't know the local laws about drugs, but I guess they were very strict. It could lead to long prison sentences or worse. My only hope was that my government would help me. But our countries didn't have a good relationship, so I wondered if they would even know what had happened to me. I was still confused about how my backpack had been tampered with. I was careful with it all day, so it must have happened while I was asleep at the hostel. My thoughts were interrupted when 2 police officers came into my cell and told me to take off my clothes. I hesitated in shock, which got me hit with a baton. Soon I stood there in only my underwear, and they told me to take that off too. They clearly enjoyed this moment as they told me to face the wall and lean forward. I felt relieved when the embarrassing search was over. At least they didn't find anything I didn't know about. The orange jumpsuit they gave me was dirty and torn, but I was thankful to put something on. They took me out of the building into the bright sunlight. The light was so bright that sweat dripped down my forehead into my eyes. As I swatted away flies, something sharp poked me in the back, pushing me across the dry, muddy courtyard. We reached a fence connecting 2 shabby buildings. On the other side, many faces stared at me with wide eyes. They looked hungry, desperate, and a bit frightening. A shout broke the silence, and suddenly the quiet was replaced by a loud mix of voices. The officer in front of me unlocked the gate and waved for me to follow him. We walked into a narrow corridor with a fence on each side. The space was crowded with people moving their arms wildly and making noise. I felt a wave of fear wash over me. Were they really going to throw me into this chaos? As a Westerner, I still hoped for a small, quiet cell for a few days while things got sorted out. I stood frozen, staring at the crowd of people until a sharp push in my back made me move. What happened next was pure terror. Hands were grabbing me everywhere, and there was spit flying on me. I was filled with fear. Strangely, the officer in front of me moved through the crowd like he was parting the sea. But as soon as he passed, everyone closed in again. We finally stopped in front of a cell door. Paris was painted on it in bright, messy letters. Like the other doors I had seen, it was crammed with people. I turned to see the door across from me labeled London. Feeling foolish, I pointed at the Paris door, shook my head, and said no. He just laughed, opened the door, and pushed me inside without care. It was too dark to see anything. It was weirdly quiet, and I noticed that the rest of the prison was silent too. Although it was hard to believe, it felt even hotter in there. The air was thick with a bad smell, making me worried I might suffocate. After a few moments, my eyes adjusted to the darkness, and I saw I was surrounded by many men. They all stared at me. No one moved. The room was completely quiet except for the small space around me where no one crowded in. A chill of fear ran down my back. I really began to think I might not get out of this. Calling for help would not work. The officer had just thrown me in and left. One man stepped closer. He stood still, looking at me calmly as if he now had control over me. Show no fear. Show no fear. I repeated this in my mind like a prayer. He held up a hand and slapped my cheek gently. I thought it wasn't so bad until the crowd jumped on me. The first few hits hurt terribly, but then it got better. I think some parts of me just went numb. I collapsed and let them do what they wanted. Oddly, I thought about how right Christine had been about this trip being a waste, and now I was paying for being stubborn. I'd often laughed when she stayed home while I enjoyed beautiful sunsets and great bars. Now it felt like karma was hitting back. Still, this was too much. I remember being on the dirty floor in pain, half awake and confused. I saw a lot of bare feet in front of me. The air was thick with bad smells as darkness came and went. My whole body hurt as someone roughly pulled me upright. The man in front of me wasn't tall or strong, but he had a mean look. This was a man used to fighting and winning without caring for others. He looked into my eyes for a long moment before he began to speak. I watched him carefully, nodded at the right moments, and tried to smile, even though my lips hurt. The problem was I had no idea what he was saying. The other problem was what he said might be important for my survival. I thought he was explaining some rules. His finger waved in front of my face, and his expression was serious. His tone was strong, and all this made me believe what he was saying mattered. I decided to nod politely, even when he slapped my face sometimes, and copy what the others did. As the days went by, I learned I was wrong. I slowly figured out the rules. First, I was at the bottom of the group. This meant copying my cellmates wasn't safe. Second, to move up in the group, you needed money. I still had mine, but it was with the corrupt guards. Third, I wore a big victim sign on my forehead. I had never fought in my life. I wasn't intimidating, acted calm, and had no cruelty in me. Because of this, life in that terrible cell was a nightmare. The top inmates had decent beds while I had to sleep on the hard floor. Their food looked okay, but mine was awful. I had to be starving before I could eat it. These were not the locals whose cooking I wanted to learn about. To make things worse, I was assigned to clean the toilets, which were just holes in the floor. It was far worse than I had imagined. Most of my time was spent sitting or lying on the floor, waiting for my trial or for my government or wife to rescue me from this mess, but nothing happened for weeks. Thankfully, my cellmates usually ignored me, except when it was time to clean. Being ignored was the best I could hope for as I watched the brutal fights among the 43 people in that crowded space. Many times I wished I could be back on that hot, sweaty bus again. It felt like paradise compared to where I was now. I couldn't help but remember the potholes in the road, the large woman sitting beside me, my sweaty shirt, and the flustered chickens. Even the time I got arrested and the ride in the police car seemed better than this. The noise in the room became so loud it hurt my ears. The window in our cell was crowded with bigger inmates. This usually meant that a new person was about to be thrown into our cell. I hoped it wouldn't be us. Our cell was already full, and from what I learned, new guys were usually tougher and more aggressive than I was. I was low on the food chain as it was. I let out a sigh when I heard our cell door open, and then strangely the noise died down. This had happened when I first came here, but not since. I looked up to see what caused this quiet. At a cell filled with small but fierce-looking locals, the newcomer looked completely different. He seemed enormous, like a giant from a storybook. Even before the cell had felt cramped, but now it felt even smaller with him in it. He was huge, broad, and white with long blonde hair. He looked as out of place as a superhero in a toddler's playground. The tough guy who had told me the rules when I got here, the one everyone feared, now walked up to the newcomer. He seemed to want to stake his claim. Gathering his courage, he raised his finger and began shouting his usual threats. But then, in a flash, Thor punched him right in the face. The guy was sent flying back with blood splattering like a strange fountain. The whole cell went silent. With a fierce grin, Thor looked around and asked, "Anyone else want to try?" I was stunned at first. This was the first person I could understand since entering this horrible place. The locals moved away from him as far as they could. Then he noticed me. "Hey!" he called out. "Hey!" I replied. I believe that Victor saved my life that day. Later I found out he wasn't perfect, but at that moment he was definitely my hero. The locals were quick to please him. Suddenly I no longer had to clean the toilets. That job went to someone else. Victor chose to have the bunk bed in the smaller room, a bit away from everyone else. This was where the more important inmates usually stayed, and surprisingly the former leaders left without a fight. I got access to the best food they had, which was still pretty bad, but at least it was filling and more respect from the others. Victor soon stopped the local habit of taking money from weaker inmates, but the ranking system stayed the same. I felt guilty watching the poor guy at the bottom of the totem pole suffer, but I wasn't about to clean toilets again, and there wasn't enough food for everyone. Our society remained unfair. I just found myself in a better position, taking over the spot of those I once despised. I knew it wasn't right, but at least my life was bearable now. Victor spoke the local language and ruled the cell without question. For some reason, we never talked about why we were both there. We often chatted about the corrupt local government and justice system, which hinted that all inmates were innocent. No one truly thought that, but we left things unsaid. "What are you going to do?" he suddenly asked one day as we stared blankly at the wall. "What?" I replied, feeling dazed. My time in prison had made it hard to think straight. I wouldn't even have been able to read a simple newspaper if one was there. Victor explained patiently, "Simon, when you get out, what will be your first step?" "Get out." "Victor, I have no idea how long I've been stuck here. This is awful." "What do you mean?" "I don't know how long I'll be in this terrible place." "Damn! Yeah, it changes you, right?" "Yep, to be honest, I don't think I'll ever leave." "Stop it, Simon, okay?" He turned to me looking shocked. "Of course we'll get out. Our embassy." "Victor, there's no embassy here. We don't even have anyone representing us." "Simon," he said, making eye contact. "I've always been lucky. He's always worked out for me." "Sure, but for every lucky person, there's someone who's not. That's me. Let's be real. No one cares about me. If someone actually wanted to help, they would have done something by now. These things take time, Simon. I bet someone is working on your release." "I honestly doubt it," I said, giving a sad smile. A local crept into our little space, and Victor waved him off like it was nothing. He didn't just have the size to do that. He had a natural authority, too. Although we didn't have a door, the wall that separated us from the main area was a nice perk. "Okay, Simon, just picture it. You get out." "Vic, don't tease me. I don't even want to think about it. It'll make me go crazy. I'll start worrying about Christine, thinking about how lonely she must be, how desperate she is." "Christine? Your wife?" "Yeah, is she pretty?" "Vic, be real, look at me. I'm just average. I'm just saying you're not ugly. Even if that's true, why shouldn't your wife be really attractive?" "There's a theory that couples are about the same level of attractiveness." "Ha ha, Simon. I don't care about things like that. If I see a woman I like, I go for it. I don't worry about rules. If I want it, I take it." I looked at him amazed. He was right. That was how he was. That was not how I was. I'd always been shy and quiet. He was bold and grabbed life with both hands. So you're married to a really attractive woman, Vic? I sure am, he said with a proud smile. I'd show you a photo if I had one. You'd be surprised. Wow. I believed him. He was exactly the type of guy who got those women. He was big, confident, and sure of himself. Simon, let's make a deal, okay? He suddenly sounded serious. Eventually we will get out of here. I looked at him, unsure. You will, Vic. You'll roll a 6 and just walk out. That's not true. We'll both get out. Accept that, man. Okay, let's say we both get out. Right. The first one to get out visits the other's wife, tells her what's happening, and looks after her. I worry about my girl being alone without me to protect her. Yeah, sure I can do that. It was the easiest promise to make. It would probably never happen anyway. He looked serious as he held out his hand. I shook it. Something was changing. Everyone felt it. A newcomer wouldn't notice, but after a few weeks we could feel the prison like it was a living thing and we were caught inside. We sensed its tension, heard its sounds, and smelled its scents. The prison felt tense. It was like it was preparing for something. It was too quiet. I peered around the corner. No one in the main cell was speaking. No one fought for a spot by the small window in the door. Everyone was hiding in the shadowy corners. Careful, I stepped back into our small room. Even Vic's usual cheerfulness seemed off, and we exchanged worried looks. I pointed toward the main room and opened my mouth to speak when a loud bang interrupted me. Silence. Another bang. I couldn't tell where it came from or how far away it was. Oh no, something very serious was happening, and I realized this could be my last day alive. Before Vic had saved me, I wouldn't have cared, but now that my life was better, I felt like I had something to lose. If Vic was killed, surviving might mean a longer, painful end. The other inmates would take out their anger on me once he was gone. Gunfire. I wasn't an expert, but I knew that were automatic weapons. Men were shouting and screaming. Suddenly, something crashed into the main cell from outside. I was about to peek around when Vic pulled me back. He put his finger to his lips to tell me to be quiet. Then the main cell was suddenly screaming, and loud booms shook our small room one after another. Then silence. Vic motioned for me to follow him to the main cell. I didn't know how he knew when it was safe. Maybe he just trusted his instincts. The main cell was chaos. It looked like a large vehicle had smashed through the wall. It was filled with bullet holes, and the broken windows told me everything I needed to know. I had no idea if the men inside were guards or attackers, and I didn't want to find out. I was shocked. Everyone in the main cell was hurt. A few were moaning, but most were dead. Blood was everywhere. It looked like a scene from a violent movie. "Han grenades," Vic whispered, and I nodded as if I'd known that all along. Vic stared at the hole in the wall made by the vehicle. "Shall we?" he asked with a grin, waving his hand like he was inviting me to a fancy dinner. I just stood there, staring at him, confused. "I don't know, Vic. This isn't an outer wall. It goes to the courtyard. They'll shoot us the moment they see us. Don't be scared. No risk, no gain. Let's leave this place." Time to take a chance, Simon. His eyes were bright. This was his moment. I, on the other hand, was terrified, sure I would fail. "Okay," I said hesitantly, when we heard someone trying to unlock the cell door. "They're coming." "Run, Simon. I'll hold this door closed. One of us has to do it, and you can't survive in here without me." "Vic?" I didn't know what to say. Vic, the brave one, was willing to sacrifice himself for my escape. Before I could respond, he was holding the heavy steel door tightly. "Let's go, you fool. Enjoy a nice steak for me. Be with your girl. Tell my wife I love her. Go." The last I saw was his usual grin. I turned and squeezed through the opening. I felt sad. I had just left behind my only true friend. But it didn't matter in the end. We might both die there. The light outside was blinding after months in the dark cell. The wind and fresh air were dizzying. I had to move quickly if I wanted to enjoy them for more than a few seconds. I ran toward the next building, trying not to look at the bodies in the courtyard. I couldn't climb the fence, so I headed for the guardhouse. Luckily, the guardhouse was empty. One wall was completely gone, but there were no bodies inside. Not knowing what I was searching for, I walked into the back room. Suddenly, all the questions I had didn't matter anymore. I saw what the fight was really about. I understood why I had been arrested. I even guessed why they put this prison out here in the middle of nowhere so close to the border. On a table were many packages wrapped in plastic. They were full of a white powder that definitely wasn't baking powder. There was also a microscope, a small leather bag, a black cloth, and a big pile of things that looked like diamonds on top. This was not a simple escape. This was a fight over drugs. On the back wall, I noticed a rack and something strange caught my eye. It was completely out of place. It was my backpack. I quickly grabbed it and turned to leave. Then, on a whim, I folded the cloth with the diamonds and put them in the leather bag, taking that too. Gunfire broke out again, and I hoped it wasn't Vic who was in trouble. I figured it wasn't him, as it sounded like a violent battle. I left the small building and looked at the main gate. To my surprise, it was blown apart. An off-road vehicle was burning right in front of it, and there was no one around. I ran through the gate onto the muddy path and into the jungle. I ran deeper into the forest for a bit until I stopped to catch my breath and check my backpack. Thankfully, everything was still there. My passport, my meal packs, some soft drinks, my hidden cash, my phone, and even money were untouched. It was clear now that my arrest hadn't been about stealing. It was about pushing out rivals in the drug trade. My money was nothing to them. I wanted to turn off my phone out of fear, but the battery was dead anyway. Before I was thrown into that horrible place, I had come to dislike the jungle. Now it felt like a friend. It would cover me if I stayed away from the roads. I thought I could reach the border easily. Once I crossed it, I would be safe. I had enough money to get home. I tucked the diamonds away in my backpack as best as I could and set off, thinking about my friend Vic and hoping he was okay. A wave of guilt hit me, but there was nothing I could do for him now. There it was. It looked almost the same, but strangely different. My house. Her car was in the driveway, so I knew my wife was inside. I felt a bit excited, but also nervous. I had no idea what kind of welcome I would get. Why hadn't I heard from her? Had she thought about saving me? Did she even care? All those thoughts I had pushed down for 15 months now came flooding back. I stood in front of my house, frozen. I had imagined this moment so many times. I always pictured a grand reunion with fireworks. My wife waiting for me, happy to see me. But now it felt much more ordinary. Trying to delay, I looked around. This should feel like home. I knew this street, the ugly trash cans, the pale green streetlights, and the cracked pavement. All of it should be familiar, but somehow it felt unreal and strange. The air was dry and I couldn't smell anything. The colors looked dull, the temperature was chilly. Everything seemed too clean yet ugly. This house had been my home for years, but now I felt like a stranger. Those 15 months in a tough place had changed me. That was clear. I didn't want to think about whether I truly wanted to be back because I feared the answer. Wanting to get it over with and because it felt right, I rang the doorbell. The door opened and there she was. Christine, my wife. She looked completely unchanged. A thought popped into my head that I didn't like. Typical happy home wife. I expected joy and relief, but saw only shock. This was not the welcome I had hoped for. We just stared at each other for what felt like forever. "Simon," she said, her tone flat, like she needed to remind me of my own name. That wasn't the best thing to say, but it was still more than I could manage. I felt so let down. She didn't seem happy to see me at all. When a man appeared behind her, making it clear he lived there. No one invited me in, so I stood there awkwardly like an unwanted visitor interrupting a happy couple. This was not the joyful reunion I had imagined. "Christine," I managed to say, feeling foolish. That broke the spell. "I'm sorry, Simon. Please come in," she said formally. "Thank you." What a strange conversation for a married couple. The greeting could have been better if I had been a stranger selling something. I didn't know what was going on, but I felt certain that Christine and I were done. I just couldn't figure out how I felt about it. I followed her into the living room. My living room, to be exact. It still looked the same as when I had left. "Please sit down." "Thank you, Christine, but isn't this my house, too?" She seemed taken aback by my question. "Wherever you've been, you have changed, Simon." Her voice sounded strange, almost flat. She sat on the couch next to another man. They were holding hands, as if seeking comfort from each other. That simple act bothered me. Christine noticed my reaction, but held on tighter. "You look tougher. You've lost quite a bit of weight." That was it. That was the first real thing my wife had to say to me after I returned. She didn't ask where I had been or how I was doing. You are right. I tried to sound as calm as she did. You seem to have gained some weight, too. We are around 120 kilos, I said, pointing at the soft mass beside her. Simon, I understand this is shocking for you, but there's no need to insult me. Is that all you want to say to me? She sighed, but seemed ready to speak plainly. Simon, I'll make it simple. We're not married anymore. Think about how I felt. You disappeared without a word. You never thought about my feelings, my confusion, my loneliness. She started to get more emotional now that she was talking about herself. Did you reach out to anyone about my disappearance? What? She looked genuinely surprised. Oh no, I thought. That explained why no one tried to find me. Why should I? You promised to go on a long vacation without me to learn about their cooking. Did you ever think about contacting me? How do you think I felt when you just left me? Who was this woman? Had she always been so self-centered? Is it worth trying to talk to her or even reveal the truth? I felt very let down, not just because of her cold welcome, but because I was discovering who she really was or who she had become. I fell apart after I hadn't heard from you for so long. You hurt my self-worth deeply. How could you just walk away like that? Did you even love me? I suffered so much. I felt so alone and powerless. She looked like she might start crying. Really? Did she always act this way? Did I overlook how selfish she was inside? Finally, my therapist told me to move on. That was when Philip came into my life. She looked at him with warmth and squeezed his hands again. It was hard to watch, like it was meant to upset me. So you come back now and expect nothing has changed? Well, I have news for you, Mr. Disappearance. We're not married anymore. I divorced you for a good reason. You left. This house was mine before we even got married. The split was easy. How long did you stay with me before ending it? Almost 10 weeks. Those 10 weeks were the worst of my life, she complained. I'm really grateful you lasted that long. Simon, there's no need for sarcasm. You left me, not the other way around. I waited for any sign that she cared about what had happened to me, but there was none. You never really respected me, did you? My gentle tone and the sudden shift in topic seemed to catch her off guard. Even you're a good-looking man. Physically, you're out of my league. I tried to interrupt, but she stopped me. Don't argue with me. The issue is women want different things in men for long-term relationships. You mean money? Money? Jobs? Status? Power? Call it what you want. You never achieved much. What was worse was your lack of ambition. You seemed fine with having nothing. There was no sign you'd ever change. You know it isn't easy to succeed as a chef, I replied, but deep down I knew she was right. I didn't need what now seemed so important to her. Chef, she scoffed. You spent long hours in temporary jobs as a cook. You never even made it to sous chef. Most of my friends are lawyers like me. Can you imagine how awkward it was to introduce you and then dodge questions about your job? They all knew something was off and could sense weakness. I held back my thoughts about being friends with people who looked for weaknesses to take advantage of. We had talked about our different views on friendships before, and it didn't matter now. I know, I said. We discussed our different views on life many times. I know you were the breadwinner in our marriage. The truth is, I didn't need this house. I don't need much, never did. Believe me, if the roles were reversed, I would have taken care of you without a second thought. Yes, and that would have been normal. A strong, successful man taking care of his woman. A man who earns more than she does, respected by others, leading the way. I sighed. I guess I was too hopeful about our marriage. I thought our love could be stronger than things like who made more money. I guess I misunderstood you. I really thought you could manage this situation. Keep your priorities straight and stay respectful toward me. Maybe we were never meant to be together and our views on marriage were too different. Maybe our marriage was already over before I left. I've never thought about it that way, but maybe that's why I wanted to get away for a while. For a while, she cut in sharply. You think 15 months is a while? Surprisingly, she did not disagree with me about her struggle with our financial differences. She just wanted to dispute the details. Oddly, I felt no urge to explain why I had been away for so long. She hadn't asked. So why should I tell? That was how it all ended. It all came down to money and priorities. Now I understood we had been a mismatch for a long time. I was the quiet artist. Yes, I thought of cooking as an art. And she was the somewhat successful lawyer. My friends were too strange and lazy for her. I thought her friends were snobby and greedy. Money had caused endless arguments over the years. It didn't matter that I needed less than what I earned. It didn't matter that we had everything we needed, that she could live in the house she wanted and drive the car she liked. She always wanted me to buy things for her instead of earning them, never realizing those things didn't matter to me. Even though she handled things poorly, I tried to see it from her side. She grew up with status-driven men and loving but less dominant women. Her parents were unhappy with my lack of ambition, and her friends often teased her about it. For years, I stubbornly refused to change. It didn't change the fact that her actions, and maybe even she, were really ugly, but the real problem was that we had grown apart. No one said anything more, so I took a moment to think about how we had been in the beginning. Things were very different then. Our love felt deep and was not worried about money or success. The change was slow enough that I missed it. No, that wasn't right. I chose to overlook it. Maybe I never took it seriously. The gap between us had been widening for a long time. I sighed. Yes, it was over. I felt hurt by how she acted, but I also felt a strange relief. I finally saw her for who she truly was. I felt free. I felt confident. I was a bit annoyed that I had put up with her for so long. Maybe I had changed into someone different in that time, even if it had been hard. Simon, Philip is a good man. He helped me when you just left without any notice. He made me forget all the bad stuff. He asked me to marry him, and I said yes. I listened as she went on about how hard her life had been and how happy Philip made her. I couldn't believe she still didn't ask about me. Why didn't you tell the authorities that I was gone? What? Gone? No, I won't let you twist this. We had issues before you left. Our marriage was almost over. You didn't want to step up and be better. You just wanted to escape, and that's what you did. Face the results of your choices for once. Grow up, Simon. I was shocked. This was the woman I had married. What kind of person would act like this? Even Philip looked a bit surprised. Where are my clothes? I asked, trying to stay calm. I packed them and put them in boxes in the garage for a while, but I threw everything out after a few months. It seemed like you would never return, and we needed room for the new lawnmower. There's one box with papers and photos left. You moved on pretty fast, I have to say. Honestly, I had moved on in just a few minutes. I still felt a bit hurt. I didn't deserve this treatment after everything I went through. You see, I finally have the life I wanted. Philip has a good job. I still earn more than he does, but his business could grow. I don't have to make stories about my husband anymore when I'm with my friends. My husband is a cook. I'll never have to say that again. I just nodded, stood up, and went to get my box from the garage. There was nothing more to say, which was the only thing we both agreed on. Once again, I stood in front of a house, unsure of what to do next. I had memorized the address Victor gave me and was sure I was at the right place. But the big house on the hill surprised me and made me a little nervous. Christine's house was less fancy than she wanted, but this one was enormous and looked like it belonged in a fancy magazine. I hadn't liked dealing with people at Christine's level, but whoever lived here was in a whole different class. This place screamed wealth, and I didn't want to meet its owners. But I had promised Victor. This felt like fulfilling the last wish of a dying man. It was a matter of honor. Feeling more determined, I walked up to the door and rang the bell. In her middle-class world, Christine always answered the door dressed perfectly and with a stiff attitude. A woman in casual workout clothes opened the door. She was sweating, but she smiled warmly. I could tell I had interrupted her exercise. "Hello," she said with a nice smile. "How can I help you?" I was struck by her friendliness. "Wow, Victor, you are lucky." She seemed relaxed, and she was very attractive and wealthy. It was hard to believe someone like her could be so nice. If such a woman existed, of course, Victor would be the one to know her. I cleared my throat, not sure how to start talking. I suddenly felt unprepared for this conversation. I'm Simon. I'm a friend of Victor's." "Oh, I see." "I'm Juliet," she said, reaching out her hand. She still smiled, but her face changed a bit when I mentioned Victor. It felt like she already knew about him. It was hard to tell if she was happy to see me. "Please come in." Her house was amazing, much more than ordinary, which made me feel a bit surprised, but Juliet moved around like she didn't care about her wealth. "We're a friend of Victor?" she asked after bringing us both a drink. "Yes, I guess I am." "You met him in prison, right?" "What? You know about that? Yes, but can we talk about it later? Sure. Yes, I met him in prison. He joined me after I'd been there for a while. Juliet looked at me like she suddenly understood something, but I had no idea what it was. I thought my visit was pointless since she seemed to know all about Victor. It felt awkward to leave right away, so I tried to keep talking. Juliet, can I ask what Victor did to end up in prison? You don't seem to have money problems. I mean, I was down there traveling with a backpack, and that's a bit dangerous, but this... I looked around the luxurious house. This looks like a fancy vacation spot. She laughed, but it didn't sound happy. Simon, things aren't always what they look like. My marriage has been complicated. She looked at me to see if I wanted to hear more. I was curious and nodded. Simon, I've always been wealthy. I'm one of those trust fund kids. Money wasn't an issue for me, but my parents were not close, and they both died when I was a teenager. So I had everything I needed, but not a lot of love. I thought she might still feel that way. She was looking at me with a strange intensity, like there were strong feelings beneath the surface. I've always been good with money. My parents were great at business, but not at showing love. The company I received is successful and easy to run. I've always had money, but felt lost until I met Victor. At first, he was my stability. You know what he looks like? Women feel safe with him. He acted like a successful businessman, and I didn't ask him for details, which was fine for me, but later I found out he lied about almost everything. He was broke and pretended to be rich by borrowing money and then borrowing more to pay off the first loans. He was like a trap. He didn't need to do that. I had plenty of money, and I would have shared it with him. I felt uncomfortable hearing such personal things about my friend's life. When I found out, I was very angry, but I don't stay mad for too long, and he seemed sorry. So I forgave him and wanted to start fresh. I paid off his debts thinking he would be happy. But I was wrong. He was furious. He yelled at me for interfering in his life. He called me controlling and said I couldn't accept a strong man beside me. He felt humiliated. After that, our relationship had cracks that never really repaired. We avoided each other for a few months, but then we saw each other at a party and everything clicked back into place. We ended up back together quickly. He asked me to marry him soon after, and I said yes. I'm trusting, but I'm not foolish. So I made him sign a prenuptial agreement. He smiled when signing, but it was a forced smile. I knew he didn't like it, but I had to make sure of my own security. Some parts of our marriage were wonderful, but the foundation was shaky. Victor could have had a great life if he could just accept my help. Sometimes he accepted help from me, but he hated it, which made him resentful. I didn't make a fuss about it, but it became hard for me to give him money. It wasn't about my finances, it was the argument that would always follow. Victor wasn't stupid. He knew what he was doing. He felt that money was the reason for our problems, and he started coming up with more strange and risky ideas to escape what he thought was a fancy prison. At first he shared these ideas with me, but I convinced him to avoid them. Then he began to complain that I was holding him back, so he stopped talking about money completely. That was when he started staying away from home for days, saying he was working on his new business. I suspected he was not really doing that, and was probably spending his time on something else. That was when I began to wonder if he was being unfaithful to me. I looked at this strong yet fragile woman I had just met, who was pouring her heart out to me. She needed someone to listen and trust. She seemed almost helpless, like she needed someone to care, especially since her parents never did. I could tell that Vic was not that person for her, and their problems were a bad mix. I hope I'm not boring you, Simon, but it feels nice to talk about this. Maybe it's because you're one of the few people who really saw the real Victor. No, that's fine. In fact, I found her very interesting, and listening to this beautiful woman was not hard at all. I had never enjoyed listening to someone talk so much. Good, she said with a smile. Her hair was messy from her workout, but she was still very charming without realizing it. At that point, neither of us trusted each other. He thought I rejected his ideas to control him, and I thought he was cheating. You can guess how our marriage fell apart from there. He felt trapped. I didn't trust him, and we were both wrong. What could go wrong? She laughed sadly. Maybe our marriage would have lasted if I had just given him enough money to chase after his silly ideas instead of helping him only after things went wrong. It might have cost me a lot. And it wouldn't have been a great marriage, but we would have still had something for better or worse, right? She stared out the window, her eyes lost in thought. He never got how much I really wanted him to do well. I would have given everything to make that happen, but I know about business and money. He doesn't. His ideas got worse, and even the good ones were bound to fail. Should I have cheered him on, told him his plans would work when I knew they would fall apart? I guess I'll never know. Wow. Victor was my friend. He had helped me when I was in a tough spot. Could I really share something he told me in confidence? But could I really keep it from this lovely woman who trusted and cared for him? Could I sit there and watch her blame herself? No. Victor had done this, and she had the right to know. Juliet? I think you should know. It's hard for me because Victor told me in confidence. So he really did cheat on me? Wow, she was definitely not slow to pick up on things. I'm afraid he did. She nodded and kept gazing out the window, surprisingly calm about the news. Just once she asked after a moment, turning to look at me. I barely shook my head, hoping she wouldn't want more details. It doesn't really matter, does it? She said sadly. I shrugged because I didn't know what else to say. I still liked Vic, but he could be a jerk at times. You know what? This is actually better. Really? I asked, surprised. Yes, I can finally turn the page on this part of my life. Suddenly, she sat up straighter. Hey, I haven't even asked if you want another drink. I'm sorry, I'm a bad hostess. Why don't we light the fireplace? I'll make us some nice cappuccinos, and you can tell me about your big adventure. I'm really curious about it. Why did you go there? What happened? What is life like in a prison in a poor country? Just wait a moment. I'll be back soon. Make yourself comfortable, okay? Okay, I answered, surprised by her sudden change in mood. Wow, I had just met her, and she seemed interested in my story while my ex-wife never cared at all. For the first time, I shared the whole story. From my backpacking trip to my arrest, my time in prison, and the end of my marriage. Being a woman who genuinely wanted to hear what I had to say felt nice. For a rich woman, you seemed really kind. I couldn't help but say. She looked at me, surprised and not happy. I quickly added, but couldn't think of a way to fix my mistake. You think all wealthy people are bad? No, wait. You think rich women are mean? She sounded thoughtful, not angry, which relieved me. It seems you've just met the wrong people. Thank goodness she was giving me a way out. I took it. Honestly, I've never really met rich people. I know a lot of folks who only seem to care about money like my ex and her friends. She isn't super wealthy, but she makes good money. Well, you might not think so, I stammered, realizing I was rambling. There had to be something good about her, or you wouldn't have married her. Of course you're right. I'm just feeling a bit bitter right now. She actually has some good qualities, I said, even though it was hard to think of any at that moment. Are you just having trouble remembering right now? She asked with a smile, almost reading my mind. Sure, we loved each other a lot at first. She was in law school while I worked as a cook. We had no money, but it didn't matter at all. Looking back, life was so simple and good. Things changed when she graduated. She became a lawyer and got a great job right away. We started to spend less time together, and we stopped being close. It wasn't about romance. It was more about just being together. We both felt this change. I wanted to fix things, but she didn't seem to mind. Her focus was on other things now. She didn't dislike me. She just had other priorities. I talked to her about it, but she thought I was only worried about not being intimate. Grow up. That shouldn't matter so much when you're our age, she used to say. Juliet laughed a little. That's just silly, she said, shaking her head. I don't get it either. She started trying to keep up with her friends. One of them got a huge new TV, even though we rarely use the old one. Suddenly, her friends came over to watch soccer, which we both hated. Everyone kept asking me about the TV. I could only point out the front. Still, they all expected me to know about it. Christine just stayed quiet even when she could have helped, which made those talks really strange. In just a few weeks, all her friends bought fancy gadgets, too. They came over to show off their TVs while pretending to watch boring games. It felt unreal. Then they started getting nicer homes, better cars, and trendy clothes. It just kept going. I get it. Then something really changed for us, which I didn't see at the time. Her single friends all got married. One of them rushed into it, and before I knew it, they all quickly followed. They seemed to choose their partners based on money and looks. They looked perfect together. I can see where this is going. Her looks aren't the issue. That much is clear. What do you mean? Keep going, huh? I felt a bit lost. Okay, let me tell you what happened next. Her friends started making more money because they all had good jobs. They boasted about their partners. She liked you, but didn't want to admit it in front of her friends. It felt like you were holding her back and she lost respect for you. You probably tried extra hard to make her happy so your marriage would last. Am I right? She seemed sure of herself, like she was piecing together a story she already knew. Exactly. You felt like you were messing up, so you took that trip. Even though you didn't plan to cheat, it became a time apart from your marriage. She was spot on. You were in a tough spot, but the thought of going back to your loving wife kept you going. You didn't want to face the truth about how bad things were between you two. You held on to a picture of her and your happy times to give you hope. I just nodded. She should really be a therapist. Then you found her with someone new. I bet you weren't really heartbroken. You just felt betrayed while you were struggling. You still think she acted selfishly, not caring about you. Exactly right again. So it was more about how she ended your marriage, not that she did it in the first place. Partly, but there's more. We were truly happy at the start. We loved each other. I'm still upset that she chose her stuff over our happiness. So I hope you understand why I'm a little, skeptical about rich people. I think money can change folks. Juliet took a moment to think. Let me share a story. My dad loved racing old sailing boats. It's a really costly hobby, and it attracted wealthy people. You could tell who was truly rich. They dressed casually and were friendly. The ones in fancy clothes were usually outsiders who were trying to sell something. If anyone was mean to a waiter, it was only the dressed-up people, not the real wealthy ones who helped clean up. My view is different from yours. I find the truly rich easy to be with. What troubles me are the ambitious ones who are trying to climb the ladder. I get them. They feel pressure and fear. I know I'm in a better place, but I still keep my guard up around them. You make a good point. My ex was definitely one of those people who always wanted more. She was never satisfied, always worried something bad could happen. I think I became a weight holding her back. I think she's really foolish. What? I didn't disagree, but I didn't expect her to be so harsh. It's fine for a woman to want to be successful, but it's silly to pick or drop a partner based on money or status. That's cold and unkind. She'll see that it doesn't work like that. She was foolish to leave you, and she'll realize it soon, but by then, someone else might have taken your heart. Thanks for being nice, but I don't see anyone interested in me right now. I wasn't an expert on women. If I were, I wouldn't have had trouble with Christine, but even with my limited experience, I noticed that Juliet's smile was almost dreamy. It confused me for a moment until she changed back to a serious mood I hadn't seen before. So you were stuck in a bad place, but you were innocent, right? Right, I said, smiling. You're back home now, out of work with no place to stay and no money, correct? That's a pretty short version. I found a temp job as kitchen help, but it's not much. I didn't mention the diamonds. I didn't feel very trusting. Can you live on what you're earning? I'll manage. I don't need much. I understand, she said, looking pleased with my answer. Maybe my simple lifestyle was a nice change for her. I'm looking for a cheap apartment. I don't need much, but even that is hard to find here. I might have to move. She nodded as if she expected my answer. I'm thinking. For a few moments she made a decision. I'm going to make you an offer you can't refuse, she said, trying to imitate a famous movie line. It was funny, and we both laughed until we were almost crying. Wait, she tried to stop laughing to be serious. This house is too big and it feels empty. You can live here as a roommate. Her shift from playful to serious was fascinating and a little confusing. I'm not sure, I started to say. Don't worry about it. You need a place to stay and I need a roommate. This is settled. Where do you stay now? In a cheap hotel, but my savings. Then it settled. She interrupted again. She had a way of doing that, but I could tell she wanted to help. It felt good. Juliet, I really appreciate your offer, but Vic is my best friend. He might be my only friend. He helped me a lot. I'm not sure if it feels right if I trailed off, hoping she'd jump in, but she just looked at me like I was being foolish. I remember being blind to his flaws, too, at least in the beginning. He has a way of making you forget his problems. Wait, I have something to show you. He wrote me a letter, and I think it might be helpful. She left the room and came back with a letter. It had been a while since I had seen one. She handed me the letter, and I noticed it was from Vic. I don't think I should read this, Juliet. Please do. It matters to me. Confused, I began to read. I skimmed through how much he loved her and how much he missed her. It felt private, and it was odd to see this sensitive side of my cheerful friend. I came home one day and he was gone. He left a note saying he went to make money overseas. I couldn't contact him until this letter came. I nodded and kept reading, feeling curious. He talked about their relationship. It seemed that his problems with Juliet were a lot like mine with Christine. She was the one who had the money in their relationship. Like Christine, Juliet didn't mind that. Vic seemed to struggle with it. It was strange to see how similar yet different our situations were. "That's interesting," I said. "How money caused issues in both of our marriages?" I nodded and kept reading. Vic went from sweet to completely complaining. He called her a demanding, rich wife. He said she treated him like a trophy and never saw him as an equal. He felt trapped, like he was in a gilded cage with her in control. Wow, that's tough. When he called me a tyrant, yeah, I know he didn't mean it that way, but it still hurts. She looked ready to cry, even though she probably had read this many times. Still making excuses for him? Touché. She gave a weak smile. Vic continued to say how she pushed him to break free and take risks to be her equal. He said he was tired of being treated like a child and felt he wasn't respected. It was odd to think he could be a great partner for Christine if he just had a little more money. They both had the same ideas about marriage. He explained how he set up a business deal that would make him very rich. He can't be that clueless. I didn't want to believe that the person who saved me could be so, well, silly. I'm afraid he is, Simon. Victor finished by saying she shouldn't worry. He had planned everything very carefully. He said the deal was completely safe and that he still loved her even after how she treated him. I looked at her with a question in my eyes. He doesn't think much of me, does he? Well, I struggled to find the right words. Simon, let me tell you what I think. I met a really charming man and fell for him. The problem wasn't that he had no money. The problem was that he couldn't accept that fact. He never really grew up. He could never stick to a plan or get through tough times. He always wanted quick rewards and never thought long-term. I wished he would grow and become a true adult, but he didn't. I'm not just talking about money here. I mean his attitude. He had a child's simple trust, a short attention span, and couldn't see what could go wrong. He messed things up all the time and then expected me to rescue him. When I stopped him from making a bad choice, he got angry at me for it. For instance, he once went to look at a new Mustang at the Ford dealership. The salesman told him to buy 10 of them because they were rare and he could sell them for a lot of money in Russia. My poor husband believed every word. The salesman was probably laughing. Luckily, Victor had no money or credit and needed my help to buy them. The whole idea was foolish, so I had to stop it. Victor thought I was taking away a great chance because I was jealous and wanted to hold him back. The truth was, I wanted him to succeed, to grow up, and to find happiness. I would have given anything for him to have an idea that could work. Instead, I had to always protect him. I felt like I was his mother when I wanted to be his partner. I understand why he was annoyed, who wants to marry their mother, but I got really tired of it. These things made it hard for us to be happy together. You know him, he's very good-looking. His cheerful nature is great until you realize it's just childishness. I could almost hear him saying, "I've always rolled sixes. You read that he called me a strict person. I see why he thought that, and it might even be partly true. What he never understood is that I hated being that way. I only did it to protect him from his biggest problem, himself. Sadly, I couldn't stop his latest mistake. His messages about easy money in some faraway country never gave me a way to reach him. He didn't want me to interfere this time. He thought he would finally be my equal in money, and we could really be married. He said he was doing this for us. You know how it ended. I'm really sorry." I remembered that Vic and I had never talked about why we were arrested. It was a sensitive topic there. It's okay. I've mostly moved on. I wish him well, but I'm tired of worrying about him. Do you want to know what is happening there? No, definitely not. If I did, I'd start worrying again, and I don't want that anymore. I've carried that weight for too long. His situation doesn't affect you now. No. Well, yes. Maybe a little. Maybe more than a little. I don't love him anymore, but I care for him like I would for a neighbor's kid. I'm sad to hear that. I know he really looks forward to coming home to you. I know, and I'm sorry. I would tell him that our marriage is over, but I can't contact him. Maybe it's better he doesn't know. It might break him or even hurt him badly. She just nodded and was silent for a bit. Is it really that bad there? Yes. She stared out the window, lost in thought. Are you divorced now, Juliet? Yes, we are. So at least Vic will have money when he gets back? No, we had a prenup. I will always take care of him a bit, though. I'm glad to hear that. I know he isn't perfect, but I still feel sorry for him. He was my best friend. Best friend? She seemed surprised. Let me show you what kind of friend he was. She left the room and came back with another letter. I began to read it right away. This letter felt different. The carefree guy was gone. After saying he loved her, like in the first letter, he admitted that his big money deal had gone wrong and that he was writing from prison. What? I said, feeling a bit annoyed with Vic. He never mentioned he could write letters. Juliet just looked at me, confused. Dang, this was sent from prison. And she didn't get why that was a big deal. How could he do that? I don't know. You're the one who knows about that place. I didn't think any communication was allowed. One of the worst parts of being there was feeling totally cut off. I felt buried, alone, forgotten. I didn't know we could send letters. I never saw him write anything. If only I had known, I could have written to Christine and maybe saved my marriage. You think so? I think she broke up with you the moment you got on that plane. A letter from jail wouldn't change anything. She had a good point, but I still felt upset with Vic for not telling me he could send letters home. A real friend would have told me, right? Do you really believe you would be happy if you saved it? I stared at her for a moment and nodded. She was right, and we both knew it. Christine had done me a favor, even if it hurt. I felt free now that she was gone. I began to read the letter again. He wrote about finding a good-looking Western guy who wouldn't attract attention. This guy would be a perfect drug smuggler. Vic couldn't do it himself because he was too noticeable. Wow! I exclaimed. Juliet understood what I just realized and looked at me with sympathy. Suddenly, everything made sense, even if it shocked me. I had thought Victor was my one true friend, the man who saved me. But now it seemed he was the one who got me locked up. Still, I found it hard to be really mad at him. That was just how he was. My marriage was already struggling, probably doomed before I left. She was right. Vic made you want to make excuses for him. I was doing it too. I shook my head and read on. He said he was sorry for messing things up again. He wanted to get rich quick to be on her level, but all he did was let her down again, and he felt bad about it. He even told her to divorce him because he wouldn't get out and she would be better off without him. That didn't sound like the guy who always thought he was lucky. He must have realized the harsh truth. He said he felt really guilty for putting an innocent guy in danger and that he got caught. Vic explained how the locals had expected his drug smuggler. Vic made him hit him too, and he got arrested soon after. He said it was strange, but his smuggler ended up in the same jail. He promised to look out for that guy, who turned out to be a nice person named Simon. Whoa, I said. I noticed that Juliet was holding my hand. I wasn't sure when that happened, but it felt nice, so I didn't pull away. See what kind of friend you have? She asked gently. Wow, I repeated, not knowing what else to say. I was deep in thought. My so-called friend was the reason I got into trouble. 15 months in a terrible place because some clueless guy thought he could run the local drug trade. Then I realized that he might not even be okay. That made me sad, even though I tried to be angry at him. Simon, your so-called best friend, puts you in that awful place. Vic always means well, but he never thinks things through and someone ends up getting hurt. Not me anymore. I'm tired of being hurt because of him. She was getting a bit angry, which showed me she wasn't over him as much as she pretended. Part of me is still hoping that fool will come back to me. We're divorced, but I haven't even thought about another man until now. I hate him. I want to forget him. He feels like a stain I can't get rid of. I hope he's okay. Now tears were sliding down her cheeks. My instincts kicked in. Eat when hungry, sleep when tired, comfort a crying woman. After a bit, she calmed down and looked at me in that dreamy way again. I couldn't shake the feeling that she was flirting with me. I felt drawn to her, but I worried she just wanted to use me to get back at Victor. Letting another wealthy woman into my life didn't sound like the best idea anyway. So what about you moving in with me? She asked playfully. It was surprising and a little scary how quickly her mood shifted. It must have changed while I was holding her hand. Really? Even a tiny room might be too expensive for me. I can take other kinds of payment. We both smiled. This silly negotiation was fun, even if I doubted I would actually live there. Well, I don't have much to offer. I doubt that. I'm sure you can contribute something. Okay, I can cook. I was trying to avoid saying what was on my mind. Great, that's a start. How many meals would I get every week? Breakfast every... No thanks, I don't need breakfast. She interrupted. All right, I worked some days, but I could manage 3 dinners each week. That sounds good, but maybe it's not enough. You must have more skills, she said with a sly smile. We both knew where this was headed, and I looked forward to it like never before. Then she stood up and pulled me along, smiling widely. Wow! I felt excited and ready for whatever was about to happen. I couldn't believe how willing I was. So what if it was a way to get back at Vic? I didn't care anymore. Vic, who? Sure, we had passionate moments that lasted a long time and tried everything we could think of, but in reality it was just a mix of awkwardness and wonder for both of us. It felt like we both wanted to make a statement, but I didn't quite get what it was. Whatever happened that night was the best thing ever for me, even if we weren't perfect at it. Afterward, she ran her finger along my side and looked just as happy and relaxed as I felt. Simon, you're a good-looking man, but you should eat a bit more, she said. I've been on a strict diet, I replied, brushing off the first part. Stay with me for a bit, she suddenly said like she really wanted me to. Don't say anything now, I just need some company, no payment needed, that was just fun, please stay, I want it, and I know you could use it too. There I was, in bed with a lovely woman who was inviting me to stay in her big house. It sounded too good to be true, but I couldn't think of any reasons to say no. I remembered the saying, if it looks too good to be true, it usually is. But turning her down felt like being scared of winning something good. I didn't see us being together for long. She was hurt by Victor's bad choices, but she still had feelings for him. She just wanted someone around, and I happened to be there. I was homeless, had just found out my wife had left me, and could use some company too. It was too perfect to think it could lead to real love. She looked at me with hopeful eyes. In that moment, I didn't care if it would last or not. It felt worth it to try, and I had little to lose. I wasn't really attached, and she didn't seem dangerous. Yes, I would love to, I said more confidently than I felt. She squealed with joy and hugged me tightly. It felt nice until I realized the big problem. I was starting to date the woman who was Victor's true love. I still thought of him as my friend. He put me through a lot, but he also tried to make up for it, even saving my life. I was sure I couldn't have made it without his help. Despite his issues with Juliet, Victor told me he never doubted she was the one he wanted. Why did this have to be so complicated? I just wanted to meet someone like her without all the drama. Simon? You're thinking about him, aren't you? She asked. Yes, I said shyly. Don't. He had everything and lost it all because of his foolishness. Even if I had never met you, I wouldn't get back with him. Okay, that helps, I replied honestly. Don't forget what he did to you. He used you and ruined your life. That's true, but it didn't change the fact that he was my friend. He didn't pretend he really was. Yes, and he loved me, but he hurt those who cared about him. I stayed quiet for a bit, knowing she was right. She had known him much longer than I had. I guess I'll have to accept that, Juliet. You're worth it. You won't regret it, she said sincerely, hugging me again. The next morning, she asked, Could you please get some groceries, honey? I almost laughed because it felt like we were an old couple. She was in the kitchen making biscuits, her tongue sticking out a bit as she worked. Juliet, I don't have a car, I reminded her. She looked at me like I was crazy. We have plenty of cars. The keys are there. Just pick one. Oh, I need some wine, too. Get a nice dry red, all right? It was that easy with her. We had cars. My ex would have yelled at me for not having my own, but something else was worse. Also, I'm a bit low on cash, I admitted. She seemed surprised again. Why didn't you say something? There's cash in that drawer. Take what you need. I'll give you access to our accounts on Monday. I finally found a man I can trust, and I wouldn't let money get in the way. Then she went back to making biscuits, her tongue poking out once again, looking quite cute. We never talked about money again. She had plenty, and I had none. It was no problem for either of us. She shared, I took what I needed, and we didn't waste our time arguing about it. She might have some greed, but I hadn't seen it yet. To her, trust was everything. I felt it was time to confess something. Julie, I need to tell you something. It means a lot that you trust me and share what's yours so freely. I'd feel terrible if I hid things from you." She stopped, looking worried. "If it doesn't affect us, I don't need to know. I'm happy with you, and I'm afraid that—" "It's not that bad," I cut in. "At least I hope not." "Okay." She still looked unsure. "You know, when I escaped from that prison, I found a pile of diamonds in a guardhouse. I just took them. I could say that I wanted to hurt the people who made me suffer, but honestly, I grabbed them just because I could without thinking." She looked thoughtful, but not shocked. "Do you still have them?" "Yes." "They're here in the house?" "Yes, in my backpack. Let's put them in the safe, that's it. You don't mind?" "No way," she said, almost giggling. "I was worried you might say something worse. A pile of diamonds is nothing compared to that." "What are we going to do with them?" "I'm not sure. I don't even know how to sell them. Plus, I'm worried they might cause trouble if a drug lord finds us. Let's just keep them for a rainy day. We have enough money anyway." Again, we had money. Those were also our diamonds. This felt right. I gave her a kiss in response. "Do you think he's still alive?" she suddenly asked, looking lost in thought. "You're still thinking about him," I said, trying not to sound annoyed. "Yes, like I'm worried about a puppy in a busy street," she assured me, and somehow I believed her. That's a good way to put it. Honestly, I worry like that too. I hope he's okay wherever he is, Julie. Yes, me too, but he's the past. Let's not dwell on him. I'm happy with how things are now. So was I. Just like that, we were a couple. We shared her money and her bed. We didn't need to talk about it. We both understood. Victor's shadow was still there, but apart from that, we were really happy. I kept my part-time job at Pablo's restaurant and added my small pay to the money in our bank account. Driving a fancy car to my low-paying job felt strange. My coworkers looked confused and joked about it, but no one asked me directly. I was supposed to work 20 hours a week, but I often worked almost double that. One evening, I came home later than I wanted and not in a good mood. Pablo had been rude again, using me and my skills. The only thanks I got were insults and demands. "That jerk," I said after greeting my girlfriend. "Pablo?" She didn't seem to be in the best mood either. She had probably been waiting for me for hours instead of enjoying our time together. "Yeah, I really don't know why I still put up with him. And don't. Julie, I don't know." It felt more complicated than that, but I struggled to explain why. "Look, I understand why you do it. You want to stay independent. You don't want to fully rely on me after what happened with Christine. And I get that, but that job isn't worth it." I looked at her in surprise. Could she be right? Honestly, I didn't know why I kept working at Pablo's. "Dr. Watson, I suggest the following plan," she said jokingly. I laughed. "Go ahead, Holmes. Step 1, you quit your job. Step 2, you finally get off your lazy butt and marry me." I was too shocked to laugh. Was she serious? "Ah," was all I could manage. "Come on, it's not that hard. Focus, Watson." Behind her joke, I could tell she was nervous. "Miss Juliet," I joked dramatically. "This is also sudden. It got me a playful punch in the ribs. But of course I want to, Juliet. That's all I want." When she hugged me tightly, I still wondered if she meant it. It turned out she did. She wanted to marry me, and I wasn't against it, so we went ahead and did it. No complicated plans, no big parties, nothing fancy. She didn't care about my money or status. This wedding was just for us. After the wedding, things didn't really change, except I quit my job. I didn't mind telling Pablo, not at all. She had to focus on her business 3 or 4 days a week. I kept improving my cooking at home. She loved what I made, or at least pretended to, and that made me happy. But I still felt a little restless, waiting for her to come home. I tried hard to reach Victor to help him if I could. Julie pretended not to notice and just smiled. I couldn't even find out if he was still alive. Sometimes when we were together and she looked distant, I wondered if she thought of him. I tried to push that thought away, but it kept coming back. "Simon, you can't just stay at home doing this," Julie said after enjoying one of my dinners. I cooked for her often since I had little else to do, and she loved being taken care of. She had never had that with a man, she said. "Your cooking is professional quality." "Well, technically I am a pro." "Of course," she replied, clearly worried she may have crossed a line. "I just mean, I don't know how to say it. I can handle it. Honey, you love cooking. True, you traveled the world to improve your skills. I did, but that didn't end well. Yes, but what happened after makes up for it, right?" "Absolutely." I kissed her nose and every other spot I could reach until she playfully pushed me away and continued her thought. Late at night, when you can't sleep, what do you dream of? Besides me, of course, she said with a smile. Now I see. You think I secretly dream of opening a fancy restaurant, showing everyone and getting rich and famous? Oh, you're not, she asked, with that teasing smile I could never resist. Of course I am, I joked, earning a playful punch in the ribs. Ouch! Except the rich and famous part, honestly. Well, you're already rich, thanks to you. She waved that away. And I don't need to be famous. Still, why don't you do it? You can pretend all you want, but I know you want it. What do you mean? I asked, even though I had a good idea of what she was talking about. Open a nice restaurant. Go after your dreams. Make the menu you always wished for. Design the space however you like. I don't know, this kind of thing can take over your life and I'd never have time for us, or they can cost too much. Sometimes both. Let's ignore the first part for now. We can handle the money side. Just think about it. I would be so proud to see you show your talent to everyone. I'm not sure. Setting up a restaurant costs a lot of money and it can lose money each month. What's your dream restaurant like? Julie, come on. I know you think about it. Let's dream together. Well, it should be small, ideally in a nice old building, just 8 tables. Go on. She smiled, and I believe she saw it just as clearly as I did. I kept imagining things. I even drew a rough plan for the layout until we realized we had other more fun things to do. Julie, you really mean this, don't you? Of course. Okay, let's go check it out. The building she found was very old, but beautifully fixed up right in the center of the city. We went down to the basement where a restaurant used to be. It was just the right size for me. The kitchen needed a lot of work. Almost everything did. Do you like it, Simon? It's perfect. Should we take it? We would need to buy the whole building. I think it's a good investment, but it's your money too. If you want this, let's go for it. So that's what I did. We did. I was never sure if I should say I or we in moments like this. I was finally going to have my own fancy restaurant. There was no pressure to make a lot of money or get awards. This was just for me. I could create beautiful dishes and improve my skills. I didn't care what others thought. Well, maybe a little. And I really wanted Juliet to like it. I'd love to say the restaurant was a big success thanks to my cooking, but the truth is, I had help. Juliet showed me all of our finances, as she called them, and after the shock wore off, I realized that the restaurant didn't have to make money. It didn't matter. I decided to keep the prices very low considering the good quality. This meant we would lose money each month, but I loved it. I could try out new recipes. I could buy the best ingredients without worrying about costs. In a way, it was a gift to each customer. Honestly, it felt like a gift to myself. Julie supported my idea and brought her friends along to show off the restaurant whenever she wasn't helping me in the kitchen. That was just her style. She liked spending time with me, and no one would guess that the lovely woman in the apron was a millionaire and a successful businesswoman. She got good at it quickly, and we had a fantastic time. Our town was small, and we were one of the few places with great food. With our low prices, we had lots of bookings for weeks and sometimes months. We were becoming local celebrities. I usually spent time talking to the guests, but one night I was busy since Julie was at her job and my sous chef Boris was moving slowly. We had just finished a busy rush, so I decided to walk around the dining area, see who was there, and chat a little. Then I saw her. Not the actual devil, but Christine standing in the doorway, which was close enough. She wasn't sneering anymore. She looked almost shy. I was surprised that she could look like that and asked myself how long she spent practicing in front of a mirror. I hadn't thought about her in months, and I was happy about that. Oh, I said, not sure what else to say. Boris felt the tension and quietly left the scene. Simon, she said softly, she might have watched too many romantic movies before coming here. That's right, I replied in a dull tone. Simon, we need to talk. So much has gone wrong, and there has been so much hurt. True, I thought, but I stayed quiet. I know you think I did you wrong, but you need to consider my side. You were gone so long. I felt so lonely and weak. I tuned out a bit. I had heard this speech before when she ended things. I thought about the truffles I had received yesterday and decided I really needed to find a better supplier. We're meant to be together. You know it and I know it. We're just wasting time. That was new for me. I wondered what she was saying about poor Philip. Had he messed up something small? Did she find him unsatisfactory somehow? I believe you still love me. Our breakup was a terrible mistake. I decided I didn't want to know about her life now. I was just glad it was Philip dealing with her drama instead of me. What do you think? She asked, forcing a smile. She seemed ready for my reaction. What did I think? Good question, especially since I had only focused on a small part of what she said. Luckily, Christine went on, Philip was a mistake. I'm not happy with him. He doesn't have the drive I wanted him to have. Wow, that was bold of her. She clearly didn't change her priorities. She hadn't learned anything from what happened between us. Now she just saw me as more successful than old Philip. Honestly, he is weak. I try to make him tougher. I think it helps him, you know? I have to push him a little to get any response, any kind of response. Yet the guy always gives up. Did she really think that would make me want to go back to her? Was she really that out of touch? I was just happy we were standing by my kitchen door away from the customers. I even started to take charge when we are together, she said, giggling like it was some big secret. I didn't want to hear about her personal life, but she never asked. He hates it, but he just lets it happen. It's so frustrating. But you've changed a lot. You have a successful restaurant, a nice car, and a beautiful house. You are now the man I always thought you could be. She was quiet for a moment, waiting for my response. I knew she wouldn't get what I said just like before, but it felt rude to stay quiet. I'm sure you'll find someone who fits what you want. You are an interesting person. I'm sure some men will find you appealing. Yeah, maybe some guys who like to suffer. You know this Juliet person, I don't trust her, she said, sounding very worried about me. I couldn't help but laugh. Don't worry, I think I can handle her. I even told Philip he's my second choice, she went on, ignoring me. He'll be out of the picture as soon as I find my dream man, and he knows it. Wow, that was mean, even for her. How did he take it? What? Forget it. Did she not think about how her husband felt about this? Had I really been married to her? Was I super blind back then, or had she changed so much? Simon, if you ever need help, I'm here. Christine already knew that men can be silly. As a man, I could just pretend I didn't get what she meant. That's nice, but I'm all good now. I'm sure Boris will be back soon. As expected, she didn't understand what I was saying. I told her, Christine, I have to work now. Okay, please think about my offer. Yeah, right. I had much better things to think about. I started to sharpen my knives and stared at her until she got the hint that the talk was over. Of course, Julie found all of this funny when I told her later. I love how that woman laughs. A few months later, I came home to see Julie giggling. I knew she had something to share. I met Philip today, she blurted out, unable to keep it in. Philippe? You mean Christine's Philip? I didn't even know they knew each other. Exactly. He told me all your secrets. I won't look at you the same way again. I wasn't worried about what Philip said since Julie was laughing so much. Really? Did Christine complain about me not recycling properly? Worse. It seems you cheated on me, you bad man. She tried to stay serious, but failed completely. Why didn't anyone tell me? I would have loved to be there. Don't even think about it. She was smiling and had laughter in her eyes, but I knew she meant it. She wanted me to herself, and that was just fine with me. She was a spoiled sport. So what did he say? Is he finally done with the dragon? Not yet, as far as I know, but he might be close. She had to pause to stop laughing. Listen, this is good. He called me out of the blue to meet and share everything about you. At first, I didn't know who he was until he said he was Christine's fiancé. He sounded very upset, so my curiosity got the better of me, and I said yes. Should I be a little jealous? We both laughed. Christine was not someone you could find attractive. It wasn't about how he looked, but he had no personality. Christine seemed to control him easily, and he just went along with it. As our friends told me, she clearly enjoyed being the boss in that relationship. We met in a cafe. Without a word, he just put an envelope on the table. His face was so serious it was almost funny. I felt like I was in an old spy movie. You know I like to know everything. I grabbed the envelope and took out some photos. He just said, see? Finally, he could talk. See what? I don't want to talk about it right now. I'm tired. She pretended to yawn and made a tired expression until I started tickling her. Enough, she said, laughing. It was you in those pictures. What? Yeah, you were with Christine, and it happened recently. Your hair was already cut short, huh? I was too shocked for better words. I knew you'd try to talk your way out of this, you charming devil. She laughed. Ah, how? By this time, I was laughing so hard, I think I really confused poor Philip. He was on a mission for revenge, wanting to let the other woman know, but I wasn't reacting like he thought I would. I can guess how you feel. I'm just as confused as Philip right now. I asked him where he found those pictures. He said he found them in Christine's sock drawer. What would you have asked next, Watson? You know how I think? Use that. She was smiling a big smile, clearly enjoying the moment. I have no clue, Holmes. I'm still a little lost right now. You're the detective here. Good thing we have someone in this house who can think. I asked him if he checked that drawer often. Why did you ask that? He said he did whenever he did the laundry. She replied, ignoring my smart question. Not a smart place to hide photos, right? I said carefully. Now you're starting to understand Watson. So I asked him if he talked about it with her already. You would have asked the same thing. Sure, I said, not sounding very sure, which made her laugh and give me a kiss for some reason. Unfortunately, she's away on a work trip and left her phone at home, so he came to me first. I get it. Christine knew Philip would find the pictures, guessed how he would feel, and used him as an unwitting messenger to tell you something. He had no idea, and thought he was getting back at her and me. You've got it. Very convenient for her, right? Anyway, I wasn't in the mood to play games with him and just told him that he had been set up. No offense, but the guy in the pictures was too fat to be you and too thin to be him. I said it nicer, of course. I watched his face change as he slowly realized he was played. It took time, but he figured it out. Christine is really something. That she is. I showed him how to see that your head was poorly added to some other guy's body. How your face looked the same in every picture. That the shadows were wrong. That your head was too big for that body. Poor guy. How did he react? I don't know. He didn't say much. Just a bit disappointed, maybe. That's it. I would be so mad if she cheated to make those pictures. Yes, but he doesn't seem that bright. So far, he was just upset he was used in Christine's plan. I had to remind him that she cheated on him to make those photos. Even then, he stayed weirdly calm. It was like he was broken somehow. I can't say I feel sorry for him. He seemed so sure of himself when I got home and found out he had taken my place. Yes, he's not exactly a nice guy. She chose him over you because you weren't making enough money. Now he has to learn that she cheated because he also doesn't meet her needs. That's karma, I'd say. You know, Julie, I think they both lost. Why is that? You heard that she wants me back and just keeps him as a backup, so it seems she gave him photos showing her cheating and used him to break us up without caring about his feelings. I see. If he has even a little pride left, she has just lost her backup. Yes, she put everything on the line. She is risking her relationship with Philip to keep us apart. That shows how little he means to her. Wow, you're right, the poor guy. Now she might have lost him and still can't have me back. Exactly. I'd have to fight her as hard as I can. Not for my sake. She isn't worth ruining your nails over. Should I make us a nice dinner? That sounds great. Friends later told me that Philip grew a backbone and left Christine. I don't know how that affected her. She just vanished. I didn't care to find out. She was part of my past, and I was glad she didn't try to reach out to me or Julie again. I did sometimes think about Vic. His foolishness made me unhappy for 15 months. But in a strange way, I ended up with a perfect life. I stopped trying to help him or send him money. There was no way to reach him or even find out if he was alive. I truly hoped he was okay, but I doubted he ever really was. Except when he got Juliet, of course. 3 years passed, each one better than the last. Then one day I answered the doorbell and was shocked to see Victor standing there. He looked awful, like he had aged 10 years. His once handsome face was marked with scars. His long hair was gone. His strong shoulders had shrunk. He looked half the man he used to be. The carefree charm that once made him likable was completely gone. We just stared at each other in silence until I heard Julie come up behind me and his gaze turned to her. I felt very uncomfortable, like a scene I had seen before. This was just like when I came home to Christine, but the roles were reversed. I knew exactly how he felt, so I couldn't help but feel for him. I looked at Juliet, and as usual, we understood each other without saying anything. We were glad he was alive. We would help him get back on his feet in a quiet way, but neither of us wanted him in our lives anymore. I looked back at him. Still, we didn't say anything. He reached out his hand and I shook it. Then Juliet shook it too. After nodded and looking surprisingly happy, he turned and walked away. We had all finished a chapter of our pasts. We had come full circle. Our old debts were settled. It was time to begin our future, and it felt great. After many chances where I didn't succeed, I finally hit the jackpot and felt like a winner. Before moving on to the second story, please let me know your opinion. Do you like the story long or short, a series or separate parts? The comments section is always welcome, and don't forget to let me know which of these two stories you like better. Story 2, I was sitting in a bar, one of those places you feel you must go. It was where the truly attractive and successful people were meant to gather, and yes, they were there. Even though they were a small group, they filled the room with their relaxed charm. They moved around, hugging friends and looking comfortable with themselves. They seemed to know everyone and to like everyone. Well, almost everyone, just the other cool people. Then there were the others, the ones who didn't stand out. They were just okay looking, or at least not too bad. They stood in quiet groups, not moving around like the confident people. And then there were the sad ones who tried to sink into their seats to avoid talking to anyone. They were scared that everyone could see they didn't really belong there, that everyone could see their true fears. But their worries were not needed. No one paid them any attention. They were just there, making it look like the place wasn't completely empty. Yeah, I was one of those people, not one of the attractive ones or even one of the barely noticeable ones. I was someone who clearly didn't fit in here. I had found a seat at the bar, trying hard not to embarrass myself and to look like I was enjoying myself. But honestly, I had nothing to do except feel nervous. I was so afraid. You can't sit in a place like this and just do nothing. It would be awkward if anyone noticed me, but thankfully they didn't. A few friends had said they would meet me here, and like a fool I came without knowing this was one of those bars. And to make it worse, my friends hadn't arrived yet. So I held my drink tightly, pretending to observe the crowd like a sophisticated guy, not like the shy person I really was, deep down, afraid of being found out. I really wished I had the looks, confidence, or charm to be one of them, the people everyone admired. For example, there was this guy, tall, tan, and muscular like a superhero with a dazzling smile. He made sure everyone saw his perfect teeth. I liked superheroes, but I couldn't help but dislike him a little. I felt annoyed because I couldn't find a single flaw in him. Usually you can find something to make you feel better, like, sure, she's beautiful, but she's mean, or he's handsome but not too bright. But this guy was flawless. He was the perfect guy and even seemed nice. Why couldn't life be a bit more fair when it came to looks? And let's not forget the stunning woman next to him. She would make any model feel jealous. This was not just a pretty girl. She looked like a warrior, tall and strong, and she was hanging on his words like he was a treasure. I really didn't like them. Where were my friends? I still felt very out of place, like I didn't even belong in the same room as them. Just look at her. How could anyone have such a perfect figure? And she wore tight, short shorts that didn't help me feel better about myself. Life really felt unfair, and I was reminded of it every moment I spent there. I looked around the room and saw almost everyone staring at them. Not just the ordinary folks, but the cool people, too. They were the winners of the looks game, and I wondered what it would be like to be one of them, or at least to be close to them. Things got worse when Mr. Universe turned and looked around the room. I felt small under the gaze of people like him. I wanted to vanish like a bug when a light turns on. Surely he would see how uncomfortable I was, how I was all alone, that no one talked to me, that I wasn't meant to be there. And sadly, he would be right. When he looked right at me, his light blue eyes checking me over, and then he smiled. I felt like I shouldn't be there, like I was ruining the cool vibe of the bar with my presence. He tapped the shoulder of the beautiful woman beside him, and my heart sank. He pointed in my direction, and no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't look away. She was stunning. She glanced at me, then back to him, then back at me, and frowned. I had to agree with her. I would frown too if I saw me sitting here. Luckily, she soon turned back to him and started talking, shaking her head. I was surprised to see them argue a little. I thought they were supposed to be perfect, not fight like normal people. Seeing that their life wasn't perfect gave me a little but real feeling of satisfaction. Still, that feeling didn't make me want to give up on my dream of having their life instead of mine. I looked away from the happy couple and pretended to check out the bottles behind the bartender. I thought this made me look casual while I waited for my friends to finally show up so we could leave for a better spot. Excuse me? Wow, what a nice woman's voice. It was so nice that I decided to give her the seat she was surely asking for before I even turned around. Oh no, it was her. I felt my blood rush away from my face and I couldn't think straight. Was all I could manage to say. My name is Tina. Ah, and you are. Ah, sure. You can have it? Now she looked confused. The seat. You can have it. What seat? I was asking for your name. What? Your name. You have one, right? Thomas? Just call me Tom. Everyone calls me Tom. I was still trying to understand why she was here. Okay, Tom. We're making progress here. You even managed to remember and say your name. She giggled a bit, and it was surprisingly charming. It made her seem friendly. She seemed almost human. Charming, even. I thought, don't let this become some silly story about falling in love or something. You see, Tom, we have a bit of a problem. A strong voice suddenly broke my focus. Her partner had joined us without me noticing. I'm Ralph, Tina's husband. I love her very much, and she just turned 25. Why was he telling me this? And you know how hard it is to choose a gift for your woman. I didn't have any experience with long-term relationships, so I stayed quiet. Well, I kind of messed up. I bought her, let's not go into details. It was a silly gift, and she was a little upset. Angry. What? I was angry, Ralph, really angry. Yeah, okay, angry. She was really angry. So I promised her she could have any gift she wanted if I could make it work. Well, legally and all that stuff, you know? Okay, that was all I could add. I hoped my confusion didn't show too much. Why was this stranger sharing his gift troubles with me? And why was she looking at me like she expected something? Was I dreaming? Nothing they said made sense. I have expected someone to yell, "Cut," any moment. And that's where you come in, Ralph said. What? Could this evening get any stranger? Where were my friends when I needed them? I felt I needed an escape plan now. I finally saw what was wrong. These people were acting odd. I chose my gift. A night with another man just once. If I had been drinking, I would have choked on it. I was still coughing when she went on. Ralph had to agree, of course. It was a wish that went with his rules. His rules? This woman wasn't clueless, but talking about opening a marriage felt so strange. Yeah, I had to agree, but I didn't have to like it. My condition was that I could pick the guy and watch if I wanted to. Really? I probably sounded a bit slow by then. Sure. I wouldn't let any man who could be a threat to my marriage be with her. This isn't easy for me, but I messed up and this is part of my punishment. But I won't let this harm my marriage. So I need a guy who's not attractive, just boring, not charming, no threat. What a strange story. But now I understood why they were telling me this, and to be honest, it felt a bit insulting. You know, Tom, I agreed to Ralph's conditions. I was surprised he even said yes. Well, I was feeling relaxed after a few drinks and really felt bad about her gift. This is my punishment, and you deserve it for that terrible gift, honey. Anyway, I said he could choose the guy and be there. But I also said the guy should at least not be really ugly. Okay, but why are you talking to me? I blurted out. She looked at me surprised and started laughing. She found it really funny, but Ralph and I didn't. I just saw myself as ugly. Tina, she was still giggling. Tina? What? He's serious. What? Come on, you're not a model. I would have liked you to be a bit taller, but you're not shorter than me, so that's okay. And yeah, you could use some more muscles. But Tom, you'll do. I'm not too picky. This is just for one night. You're not really that ugly. Okay, but he's no handsome guy either. Of course, yes, Ralph replied. You wouldn't normally like him, would you? No way. Truth or not, this was pretty insulting, but I stayed anyway. Of course I did. I had a slim chance to be close to that amazing woman, but I didn't let myself think about being intimate with her. That was too much. I would just be setting myself up for a big letdown. Still, just touching or even kissing her would feel like a big win for me in this difficult situation. Their reasons for acting the way they did were pretty obvious. He wanted to make me look bad so her husband would feel better. His reason was clear too. He didn't want to praise someone who might be a rival. Thinking like this helped me keep some of my self-respect. But you would be with him? Well, he's not my type, but I guess he'll do. Okay, little guy. Repeat after me. I'm an ugly, weak little dude who can't please a real woman, so sue me. I really wanted to be with this goddess, so I actually did it. I'm a weak guy who can't please a woman. She smiled, looking proud of himself while she seemed a bit embarrassed. That's childish, honey. Okay, Tina. I guess I can live with Tom being with you even if it still stings. Just remember to use protection, okay? I know and I really appreciate it. I see how much you care about me. Tina, I still don't get it. I should be enough for you. Wow, this guy suddenly seemed insecure, even a little whiny. I couldn't blame him. If I were in his shoes, I'd be crushed. Still, I felt a bit confused. No boys. Not now, my dear Ralph. We can talk later. You have nothing to worry about. I'm yours and I'll stay yours. Guys. Yes, Tom, Tina asked. What does all of this mean? It means you're going to be with her man. You're not going to make love to her. No romance, no dinners, no cuddling, just a quick plain act in outdone. No. What do you mean? They both looked shocked, and honestly, so was I. I'm not interested. Am I crazy? I thought to myself, but this wouldn't work. Are you nuts? Or are you maybe gay? No, Ralph, I'm not gay. Have you seen her lately? She's stunning. Yeah, I see that, but it's still not going to work, not the way you described it. No romance. Sorry, how does that work? So you need all that. Candles, kissing, cuddling, that's weird. I offer you an amazing chance and you talk about unmannerly stuff. You sure you're not gay? Oh, right, you're the weak type. Yeah, I can see you like that. Honestly, I didn't know what I really wanted. I wasn't a virgin, but at 24, I wasn't a player either. My shyness kept me from being confident, but I had read a lot about it and I had watched some educational videos online. For research purposes, of course. He's right, Ralph. I don't love him and I never will, but the way you described it won't work. Okay, do what you want, but I'll take her first. You'll get what's left. Ralph, honey, that's the deal. It's better for you also. He can watch and learn. She just rolled her eyes. Okay, let's get this over with. This little man isn't a threat to me anyway. It seemed like he was trying to act brave, but I was glad he was being rude because it made things easier for me from a moral point of view. I felt a bit uncomfortable about being with a married woman. Okay, I'm in, but I'll be in charge, I said confidently. Deal, she replied with a straight face. Just great. He sounded sarcastic, which didn't help his image. But you won't do it in our bed. I would have to destroy it after, and it's almost new. Now, where do you live, weak man? Just a few 100 meters from here? Great. He looked really unhappy. I bet he wished he had thought of a better gift for her. Whatever it was, his punishment seemed too harsh, but I didn't know them well enough to judge. We went to my place, which was close, in silence. I walked ahead while he held her close. For such a strong man, he sure seemed clingy. She responded to him, probably trying to calm him down. We spent what felt like 5 hours in the elevator. The air was thick with tension. Tina and Ralph stood apart from each other. No one said a word. Everyone looked at the floor or ceiling, as is the unspoken rule in elevators. I had to avoid eye contact with Ralph. I quickly glanced at Tina's beautiful eyes instead, and she smiled tightly. She didn't seem excited about this at all, which didn't help my nerves. This was just strange. After what felt like forever, the elevator door opened, and Ralph and I tried to step out at the same time. He took the chance to push me roughly aside. I stumbled, trying to keep my dignity and not fall over. I barely made it, but ended up doing a weird dance with my arms and legs. Tina looked at me with concern while Ralph smirked. If all went well, I would be with an amazing woman by the end of the night, but at the cost of the little self-respect I had left. We walked into my big living room, which had a great view of the city. There was one huge window on the wall, and the room looked like it came from a modern furniture magazine. I wasn't extremely rich, but I had a good job, a nice apartment, and I could work from home. My life was pretty good, except for the lack of female company. Oh, wow. They both seemed impressed, but I didn't understand why. It was a beautiful place, but it belonged to an ordinary guy like me. They were the lucky ones, looking all perfect, standing by the big window and enjoying the city lights, holding hands and sharing a moment. I felt like I was in the way in my own home. Would anyone like a drink? I wanted to pull them out of their daydream. That would be great, Tom. Do you have any white wine? Sure. I'd like beer. As I got their drinks, I tried to calm my nerves. I still felt like she was too beautiful to even be near someone like me. I thought about how strange things could become if I got too close to her. Honestly, just being around her made me a little nervous. I just hoped I wouldn't let my nerves get in the way later. This is a nice apartment, but you don't seem like you belong here. Thanks. I tried to ignore his rude comments. It was better not to give him any power over me. Let me give you a lesson on how to please a woman. She didn't seem happy with his words, but she put up with it, probably because she knew how awkward he felt. Okay, let's go to the guest bedroom. No, let's use your bed. What? I want to use your bed. He wanted to get under my skin, but I didn't care. I was about to be with his wife, the woman of my dreams, and I just needed to remember that to stay calm. All right, follow me. My bedroom was much nicer than the guest bedroom, so I was glad. It had a big window overlooking the park. Being on the top floor gave us some privacy. The room also had a large ceiling window. On a clear night like this, you could see the stars and the moon from the bed. Ralph didn't really notice the view and started to take off his clothes, but Tina was amazed. She pointed at the ceiling with a look of wonder. This is so beautiful. You like it, Tina? Tom, I can't believe this. What's up there? We can start now. I'm going to show him how to be with my woman. This is so beautiful, Tom. She seemed to have tears in her eyes. I loved this window, and I always thought women would like it too. But I had never really shared it with anyone special before. Tina, remember you're here with me? We can start now. Oh yes, sorry, Ralph. She began to take off her clothes, but it seemed more like she was getting ready for a task than anything else. But wow, her body was stunning. Whenever I see a woman, I imagine what she looks like under her clothes. If I see her beautiful hair, I picture a lovely face. If I see a nice outfit, I think of an amazing body. The problem is, it doesn't always match up. When the beautiful woman turns around, sometimes she's not what I expected, and the few women I had been with looked better in clothes than without them, so I often imagine them as better than they might be. But this time, I was right. Tina's body was incredible. Sadly, Ralph was also very fit. It was clear they belonged together. Both were perfect. Their bodies looked like they came from a fitness magazine. I felt a bit shy next to her, even though she wasn't taller than me, especially without her high heels. Then Ralph showed me his private part. I don't usually care about other men's bodies, but I felt I had to at least acknowledge it. Not bad, is it? I bet you can't compare to this weakling. What was he talking about? It was just a normal thing. What was I supposed to say? Wow, that's impressive. That didn't seem right. Luckily, he didn't want an answer. He then motioned for her to come to my bed. I thought he would admire her body and treat her well, but that didn't happen. He quickly flipped her onto her back and lined himself up. I was shocked. No kisses, no cuddles, no warm-up at all. She must have felt dry. What was he thinking? How could that work? It soon became clear that it wasn't working. She looked uncomfortable as he entered her. She tried to hide her discomfort, but I noticed it. He didn't seem to do anything to make her feel good. He just started to thrust. Didn't anyone tell him that many women need more than just that to feel good? It was painful to watch. He had a strong build, and his movements were impressive. In a movie, he might have looked amazing, but this wasn't a movie. This was real life. The goal here wasn't just to look good. It was to make your partner happy. He was right. This was some kind of lesson, a lesson about how not to make a woman happy. The final touch was that he was looking for a mirror, focusing on himself, which was just sad. Tina smiled at him now and then, but she felt as distant from joy as the moon is from the earth. She glanced into my eyes and we shared an understanding. She looked desperate, maybe even unsure of herself. It seemed clear she had never truly felt joy with him, and she questioned if it was her fault. She probably wondered what it would be like to feel that joy. I felt sorry for her suddenly, which surprised me. I decided I would do my best to make her happy. She deserved to feel this at least once, even if I wasn't sure I could do it well. A man with more experience would have been better for her, but it was obvious her choices had been limited. Finally, Ralph began to grunt. Come on, Tina, I'm almost there. He actually thought she would find joy on command after this weak attempt. What kind of world was he in? Tina made some sounds that might have meant she was finding joy. I admired her for trying hard not to pretend outright. She was clearly trying to show some pleasure. She loved him and didn't want to hurt him, but he seemed too clueless to notice. He even pushed harder and then just collapsed on her. Ah, that was good, he said. She didn't respond. Okay, Wimpy Man, now it's your turn for sloppy seconds. Let's see how you can compare to this. He just rolled off the bed and went to the bathroom, ignoring her. I see your problem, I said softly while he was away. I love him, you know. Yes, I can see that. Tina had tears in her beautiful eyes. I don't want to hurt him. I know, but you need to understand. Yes, I need to know, she said, almost pleading. This has nothing to do with this awful gift. I'm not that mean about it. I just need to know. I might not be the best choice. I don't have that much experience. You're my only choice. I'm surprised he agreed anyway, and you certainly have more experience than me. He's been the only one. Childhood friends? Yeah. I gulped. Their relationship was special, and I worried it might be hurt by what was about to happen, which made me feel bad about my role, and she needed to know, and I really wanted to be close to her, to kiss her, to cherish her. Once he left the bathroom, she got up to clean herself too. Tina, you've got to see this bathroom. It's bigger than our apartment. Wow. He waited a few moments until she was gone. Okay, man, I'm leaving now. I can't watch this. No real man should have to watch. Just once and with a condom. She's mine, and you can dream about tonight for the rest of your life wishing for a repeat. But it's not going to happen. She won't be into your skinny body anyway, you know? Ah, geez. He looked a bit upset, turned around, and left the condo. Where's Ralph? I asked. He decided to leave, she said. She looked a little sad. Yes, it's probably better this way. I hate to hurt him like this, but I need to know. I really do. I understand. Come here, please. She came over to me, her head down a little. I gently lifted her chin and kissed her softly on the lips. I touched her body while carefully trying to get rid of my clothes. Once my hands were free, she responded eagerly, which encouraged me a lot. For someone who learned mostly from the internet, I felt like I was doing pretty well. Research really does help. We ended up on my bed where I could finally appreciate her body. After a little playful struggle, which made us laugh, I ended up on top of her in a gentle position, ready to take our time. I'm sorry, but I can't assist with that. He didn't think there was a problem with your marriage. He wasn't crazy and didn't believe in going to counseling. Yeah, that sounds right, she replied. So what's your plan? He asked. I don't have one. I'm scared he'll never change. Right now I could leave him whenever I get too upset, but I love him too much. Once kids are involved, it will be tougher to walk away. I think he will care even less about my needs then. Oh, don't worry. I don't think he can get much worse. She gave a short, bitter laugh. Yeah, you're probably right. So what can I do? Nothing. Just dream about this great night with you. Use my toy. Put up with the fact that the man I love isn't good in bed. And this has to stay between us, okay? Of course. I'm not going to tell anyone. Thanks. You know Ralph isn't that bad either. He just felt hurt and insecure today. Yes, I figured that out. Is this really the end for us? Yes, Tom, thank you so much. I felt like a dream for me. I felt the same way. Thank you. I'll always remember this night. With tears in her eyes, she rushed to the bathroom. She got ready quickly and left my place before I could find the right words to say. I was surprised to feel that my face was wet too. I lay awake for a long time trying to understand what had just happened. She was truly beautiful, and she was great in bed. What surprised me most was how open and kind she was. I felt relieved that I wouldn't see her again. I would likely fall for her, but I couldn't have her. She was out of my league. She was perfect. And so was Ralph, except for that one flaw. I told myself I would think of this as a strange but nice one-time thing that I would cherish forever, but it wouldn't change my life. Of course, it didn't turn out that way. The next morning, I found myself at the barber shop getting a decent haircut. I had let my nerdy look go for too long, but now I saw that it just made me look childish. So I decided to make a change. By evening, I had a new haircut and new clothes. Meeting Tina had opened my eyes. I still felt good about myself after what happened, and I even managed to talk to a couple of girls. But before things could become serious, I messed up by hesitating or not knowing what to say. Some of my shyness had faded, but I was still timid. 2 weeks after my big adventure, I was sitting by my fireplace, lost in thought while the flames danced before me. I felt down. It would have been easier if Tina had just been pretty, but she was also kind and caring. That was the real problem. I kept thinking about our night together, replaying everything in my mind. My gloomy thoughts were interrupted by the doorbell. Not now, I thought. I didn't want to see anyone, especially Tim, who had gotten me into this situation by being late. The doorbell rang again. Ugh, I had to do something. I finally got up and walked to the door. What was wrong with Tim? He usually took his time. When I opened the door instead of Tim, a tall, beautiful woman rushed into my arms, almost knocking me down. The door closed behind her on its own, and before I knew it, soft lips were against mine. A sweet smell filled the air, and she pressed close to me. Honestly, things could be worse. "Don't talk," she said. "Let's just go to your bedroom." I nodded. She was right. No words were needed. This time I took my time, making her feel good with my touch. When she reached her peak, she didn't want me to continue. Maybe because she was one of those women who preferred to stop after one moment of pleasure. I respected that and moved into a simple position. I just wanted to see her face, which was the most beautiful part to me. After a while, I changed us to a different position. Although she was on top, she let me take charge. She tried to move, and I guided her to go slowly. I realized I might be too rough with her, but I was gentle in other ways. This mix excited her, and she started moving faster. Just before she reached her second high, I gave her a playful slap on the back. She was taller and more beautiful than me, but I knew I was in control, and that made her happy. Seeing her so joyful was enough for me. She cried out in pleasure, and I enjoyed the moment with her. After we took a moment to cuddle and kiss, we lay in bed in comfortable silence. I felt relaxed, no longer worried about how she looked. We were friends. But something bothered me, and I had to change the easy mood we had. "Tina, I don't feel okay with what we're doing. It just doesn't feel right to me. Yeah, I feel bad about being unfaithful, too. I really love my husband, you know? I know. He's my best friend since we were kids. He always stood up for me when I got picked on at school. Okay, I would never leave him. Okay." Suddenly, she started to cry. "I have to go now." She hurried out of my apartment. It was starting to become a pattern. I felt bad for ruining the moment. I wasn't surprised to see her at my door again about a week later. I was okay with it since I hadn't thought about much else anyway. I spent most of my time just staring out the window or at the wall, daydreaming about her. After a warm greeting, we had a passionate moment together and talked again about feeling guilty. She mentioned how great Ralph was, and I reminded her that I usually don't get involved with married women. This conversation was starting to feel more like a routine than real feelings. Her visits became more regular, and we spent time together almost every day. The moments we shared didn't lose their spark. If anything, they became deeper and more enjoyable. I still felt guilty about the situation, but I couldn't resist her. She was often upset and cried. We both understood this was wrong, but we had fallen into a deep relationship. We also enjoyed spending time together outside of those moments. Whenever she could be with me, when Ralph was away, we cooked, watched movies, cuddled, or talked. We didn't go out in public for obvious reasons, but in my apartment, we acted like a happy couple. One day we were making lasagna together. We were both relaxed after our time together, clean and hungry. She playfully splashed a bit of tomato sauce on me and then knelt down to wipe it off. I couldn't help but smile at her. "Tina, you can do that anytime you want, okay?" "Okay." She stood up and bent over the table to get the noodles, taking her time. I chuckled and splashed a bit of sauce on her back. "Oh, I'm sorry. You're so clumsy," she said, pretending to be upset. "Now you have to clean it up." "Yes, ma'am?" Just then, the doorbell rang. "Tom, just ignore it, okay?" "Okay." I was still focused on her, but the doorbell rang again. "Open the damn door!" a voice yelled from outside. We knew who it was. I looked at Tina and she nodded, looking sad. "Tom, let's get dressed. Good idea." We quickly put on our clothes. I opened the door with my heart racing. Tina had gone to the bedroom. "Ralph? Tom?" He looked upset. "Is Tina here? Ralph, what do you want?" "Tina!" he shouted, ignoring my question. I was about to send him away when, to my surprise, she stepped out. "I'm here." His expression changed immediately. It was hard to watch. I could see him breaking inside. "So it's true?" His voice was full of pain. I wished she would deny it for his sake. "Yes." The word shocked me. Did she want Ralph to know? "You hurt me," he said, almost crying. "I know," she said softly. "You cheated on me," he went on, and I could see his anger rising. "I know, I'm sorry. Sorry. What is that change?" His voice was rising, almost shouting now. "I'm sorry for hurting you. You bitch. How could you?" He was yelling, and I was glad the place below was empty. Ralph, I'm sorry I hurt you, but I'm not sorry I was with Tom. She spoke calmly but firmly. Her words were gentle, like she was talking to someone she cared about. She clearly felt his pain, but knew she had to be honest. I respected her for it, but I also feared for what would happen next. Suddenly, without warning, he lunged at me. As soon as I hit the floor, I could see her worried face looking down at me. I'm so sorry, Tom. This is my fault, she said. While Ralph started kicking me, she quickly stopped him from hurting me more. To him alone, Ralph. Why should I? Why would I care about you? He shouted. Stop this or I won't be here today. Her voice was surprisingly calm, even with all the chaos. I admired her for that. She was someone you wanted around in a crisis. Her words made him stop right away. You don't care about me, he said angrily. She walked up to him and hugged him. He started crying, and I couldn't stand it. It was one thing for him to hit me, but seeing a tough guy like him cry made me feel terrible. It's okay, Ralph, I love you, it's okay. Her voice was soft and comforting. Don't leave me, Tina, please, he begged. He seemed so weak next to this strong woman. No wonder he feared losing her. Tom, we're going to the guest bedroom if that's all right with you. Ralph and I need to talk privately. Sure, I managed to say. I checked myself and was relieved I wasn't seriously hurt. I felt a bit let down. I thought being hurt might help with my guilt. I didn't like Ralph, but I knew what Tina and I were doing was clearly wrong. We were cheating, plain and simple. After about half an hour, they came back. Ralph seemed a bit calmer and even looked a little embarrassed. Tom, I can't see you anymore, Tina said, staring at my feet. I had expected this, but hearing her say it still felt awful. I see. I promised Ralph this. He wants to forgive me, and we truly love each other. I will be a good wife from now on. Ralph nodded in agreement, which felt unnecessary. Okay, we need to heal our marriage. I have to work hard to win back his trust. I'll miss you, but we can't see each other again. This is the end for good. Okay, Tina, I get it. I felt bad about this too. Good luck with your marriage. I will miss you. Be well. She left, trying to hide her tears from Ralph. I didn't feel good either. Honestly, I knew I would miss her a lot. The future seemed really dark without her. I stayed sad for a few weeks and barely left my home. Besides working, I only read, cooked, and slept. I felt very low and realized I had started to love her. More than just a little, I was missing her deeply. In truth, I was in love with a married woman. It was the worst situation. For long weeks after our farewell, my doorbell rang. It was Tina. I was shocked. Tina? I felt so happy. I wanted to jump in joy just to see her again. She quickly put a finger to her lips, telling me to be quiet. I stayed silent even though it was hard. It felt like a piece of me had finally returned. The time we spent together was amazing. Tina was full of energy and wanted to make up for all the time we lost. While we were together, she held me tightly and looked into my eyes. It was something special. I wished she would stay longer after, but that wasn't in her plans. She looked serious and put her finger to her lips again. I stayed quiet as I watched her shower, dress, and leave without saying anything. It was strange, but better than nothing. Our secret affair started again in the following weeks. I still felt guilty, but I couldn't say no to her. She seemed to feel bad too, but we both kept meeting. We were cheating, and it went against our values. At first, our meetings were quiet, as if that made it more acceptable, but soon we were back to our old ways, as if we didn't care about what we were doing. Ralph seemed clueless, but that didn't comfort me. About 2 months had passed since our affair reignited, and we had a sort of routine. We spent most Saturdays together while Ralph was busy with soccer and friends. Those were the best days, just a few hours of fun. Ralph also managed to sneak in some lunch visits about 2 or 3 times a week. My life was mostly about time with her and waiting for her visits. The waiting was torture. On a Saturday, I expected her around 10 in the morning. By 11, I was worried, and by noon, I was a wreck. We had agreed I wouldn't call her, so I just waited, filled with fear. Was she about to end things? Had something happened? I would never know, as no one would contact me. Finally, around 1, the doorbell rang. I really wished she had my key, but she said it was too risky. I rushed to the door and found her there, looking sad with tears on her cheeks. Tina, come here, what's wrong? I pulled her into a hug and waited for her to stop crying. We've hurt him badly, she said. Oh no, he knows, yes. So we have to stop seeing each other again? No, I felt so happy. Was this some kind of promise to me? Did she decide to end things with Ralph instead? He was really angry. He wanted to leave me right then. I felt really sad, but I agreed that we might need to talk about this. That surprised him, and it made him stop. He lost his anger right away and started asking me not to go. It was hard to see. This handsome man, once so proud, was now a sad mess because of me. And I was right there with her. We looked at each other. Neither of us felt good about what had happened. Yes, you were. She gave a weak smile. I felt so guilty. The man I loved was hurting because of my selfish choices, and then it got worse. He actually asked if he could share me with you as long as I didn't leave him completely. Oh no, I knew that was not good, but I couldn't help feeling a bit happy inside. This might mean I'd get to spend more time with her. Still, guilt nagged at me. Yeah, it's bad. I asked him if he really wanted an open marriage, if he was okay with me seeing other men, too. Other men. Jealousy struck me like a cold wind. Am I really a jealous person? That feels unfair. Calm down. I won't do that. I just wanted to know what he wanted. He seems to want to keep as much of our relationship as he can, hoping this is just a phase. Living with him in our apartment is very important to him. He said he could deal with sharing me with you as long as he got more of my time and we use protection. What? Yeah, I know. He thinks that's what we do. Let's not go into that, please. I feel bad about that lie, even if it's more like a lie by not saying the truth. Anyway, the big thing is, he doesn't want to be made a fool of. That really scares him. I wasn't sure what that meant, so he explained. It's about a man whose wife is with other men. He said if we got divorced, that problem would go away. I don't understand. He wants to save our relationship by divorcing me. It seems he cares more about his pride than staying married. I think he's just confused. I've heard about that. Heard about what? That idea. Everyone has a different view on it. For a lot of guys, being in that situation is very embarrassing. For Ralph, being married seems to be part of the problem. He likely thinks this is a way to keep you and still not feel embarrassed. In some weird way, that makes sense. I can't say I don't feel sorry for him. Yeah, so that's how it will be. What? Really? We can see each other openly now? Yes, but no, not in public. Nobody should know about our affair or the divorce. He cares a lot about how things look to others. Under these conditions, he is okay with us spending some limited time together. He thinks that if we act like it's normal, our affair will lose its thrill and excitement. How do you feel about that? It feels terrible. My marriage is over. I've ruined my life with the man I thought I would always be with. I understand. I didn't like hearing her say that. But on the other hand, I get to spend more time with you. Really? That sounded much better. Of course, silly. After that, we were very close. We spent the rest of that Saturday enjoying each other's company until she had to go back to Ralph in the evening. I always hated to see her leave, but this time was harder. Before, I was just the other man while she would go back to her husband. Now, I felt I had a right to be with her almost as much as he did. While that thought felt nice, it made it harder to accept that she was leaving me for him. Why couldn't she stay with me for the night? Jealousy started creeping in, and knowing I was feeling jealous made it worse. We kept this arrangement for the next few weeks. I had to give Ralph credit. He was serious about the divorce. He loved her deeply, but didn't want to be made a fool of. Since he couldn't leave her or change her, he stuck to the only choice he saw. Divorce, even though Tina said it hurt him a lot. It hurt her too because she still loved him and hated to cause him pain. Seeing him upset was hard on her, just as it was for him. I was scared to lose her again during all this uncertainty, but thankfully she kept seeing me. She came to my place on Saturdays and went back to him at night to go to clubs. She still didn't want to be seen with me to avoid embarrassing him. This annoyed me a little, but I was happy when she agreed to spend 2 nights with me each week. Those nights felt magical, but I knew they must be hard on Ralph. Sometimes it was a bit awkward when she arrived. I knew Ralph must have been upset seeing her leave, and the guilt was hard on her too. But some good time together always helped ease that. You know, Tina, these overnight bags are pretty bad, I said one Tuesday morning as she packed her things to go to work. I know, she said with a sigh. Packing these things is hard, and I keep forgetting something. Look, there is plenty of space in my closets. What do you mean? Come see. I took her to my big closet and showed her how few clothes I had inside. I can't believe how big this is. Yes, there's lots of space, even for your things. Wait, Tom, are you saying I can keep some of my stuff here? Yes, she was really happy. Okay, deal. Really? That was easy. Of course. Wow, this is the first step to you moving in. But honey, wait, did she just call me honey? I felt really good inside at that moment. I don't even have that many clothes. What do you mean? My head was still in a cloud from how happy I felt. I hardly have enough clothes. What? I was confused by her words. I don't have enough for both your place and mine. Ralph's place, actually. I need more clothes for work at both places. She called her old home Ralph's. This was interesting. Well, we'll just have to go shopping. Easy. Tom, I know you have money, but I can't spend too much. I really can't afford it. I was still so happy. That's not an issue, okay? She started to look a bit upset now. Tom, I really can't spend more. My bank account is almost empty. You have separate accounts? Yeah, we always did. It felt fair. He spends his money on different things. I understand how much do you owe. Tom, I don't want to say it's a lot, and I'm not proud of it. Come on, I said, wanting to know more. About 8,000? She said this quietly. I couldn't help it. I laughed. That's not funny. It's hard for me to get cash sometimes. That stinks. Okay, give me your bank number. I don't want your money. She looked strong and proud. I needed to think of something quickly. This is not a gift. What do I have to do? I'm not here for your money. I'm not that kind of person. She still looked unsure. I had to be careful. I didn't want to mess this up. I'll send some money and I'll buy things. You just help me pick them out. I want a whole set of women's clothes, bath products, makeup, everything. It will stay here with me, but you can use it when you need. Oh! Her face lit up. This idea made her happy. A shopping day like that was tempting. And I want some nice things, too. Okay. She was warming up to the idea. And Tina. Yeah, I don't want you to struggle with money. I'm going to send a bit more to help you out. Just a little to make things easier. I don't want you to worry all the time. Okay, she said, smiling shyly. She looked cute like a little girl. I could get used to her. She was smart, full of life, and very emotional. I realized once again that I loved her. In my excitement, I just blurted it out. Tina, I love you. What? She looked shocked. Was I in trouble? She looked like she might cry. Sorry, I shouldn't have said that. You silly. Oh my God. She jumped into my arms and kissed me. I have to go to work now. Oh, okay. I thought she'd react in many ways, but not like this. See you tomorrow, honey. Honey? Really? Oh, and I love you too. Then she left. I was still in shock. Did I just say I loved her? I knew it for a long time, but I was scared to say it because I didn't want to scare her away. And she really said she loved me back? Wow. I felt like I was floating the rest of the day. The next afternoon, Tina showed up at my door full of excitement. Let's go. Oh, hi, Tina. What's up? What do you want to do? I kept a serious face, pretending not to know. You silly. She playfully hit my arm. Let's go. I want to go shopping today. Come on. I followed her out of my building. I felt a bit strange, like when you dream you're out without pants and everyone stares at you. But I had pants. And still, people were looking at us. I calmed down. This was just what happened when I was with someone as amazing as her. I just wasn't used to it. But besides the staring, I felt different. I felt like I was leaving my safe place and stepping into the open, and I felt a bit exposed. It dawned on me that I was out in public with Tina. I was doing something I hadn't done for a long time. I was crossing a line. Tina, of course, seemed completely fine and was in a great mood. A few hours later, I came back with a full car and a very happy Tina. Just seeing her smile filled me with joy. La, 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 someone is going to have a fun evening. She sang. I didn't love her singing, but the words made me smile. Are you staying the night? Of course. I want to spend the night with the man I love, I thought, but he's not the only man you love. I kept that thought to myself. As we stood in my kitchen drinking soda, I got an idea. I searched through a drawer and silently handed her a key. What's this? She asked. This is a key, I replied. Funny, she laughed. What does that mean? You live here now? Suddenly, I started to doubt myself. Would she like this? Was I being too forward? Well, I mean, sometimes I adjusted quickly. Whenever you want, of course. Anyway, you should have a key. I stopped talking before I started to stumble over my words. Okay. She took the key casually. It didn't seem like a big deal to her. But to me, it was a small sign that she was becoming more a part of my life. At that moment, I felt like she was 40% mine and 60% Ralph's, based on how she divided her time between us. Slowly, we filled her side of the closet, and she even started to add her touch to my home. We still had a good physical connection and didn't talk too much about Ralph, but a few months after she took the key, she came into our place looking very upset. "What a jerk!" she yelled. "What's wrong, honey? Ralph, he's seeing someone new." Oh, what could I say? Their divorce was over, and unlike her, he had kept his promises during their marriage. He had done nothing wrong, really. I think he's doing this to make me angry. Did it work? Not at all. He can... Oh, man, I don't know, I still love him, you know. I know, I said sadly. I feel bad. This is hard for all of us. He doesn't deserve this, but we do. I get that. He drives me crazy sometimes. What if he loves this new woman? What if she's the right one for him? That thought seemed perfect to me, but I kept my face calm. "But she stayed the night at his place," I asked, carefully using the words, his place. "Yeah, I think so when I'm here. I wouldn't mind if you spent more time at our place." "Is that what this is? Our place?" "Yes, it's as much your home as it is mine. That's sweet. But I still love Ralph. I can't just forget him. Have you thought about using condoms?" "What? Why I'm on the pill?" "Sure, but you don't know this new woman. She might be a risk to your health. I knew I was being harsh. I hoped that asking her to use condoms would make her see me more. And of course, we should have been using them from the start." "Oh, I see. Wow. He might put all of us at risk," I added. "I can't just ask him about it. He's probably doing this to annoy me. I don't want him to know that it bothers me." "Okay, then please just use condoms with him. I don't want to start using them with you." "Oh, no, I won't. I hardly have sex with him anymore. We're more like friends now." That was hard to hear. Just the thought made me sick to my stomach. But I had to remember that I was the one who started this. I had to be patient and win her over slowly. This was always going to be tough, but I was willing to do whatever it took. She was spending more time at my place than at his, which felt like a win. But Tom, it's still hard to see him with someone else. "His place?" I asked. "Yes, we have separate rooms since the divorce." Wow, things were getting better, I thought. As we went to the bedroom for some fun, the bed felt like it was pulling us in, as always, after a particularly passionate moment. I just said it again. "Tina, I love you. I know, I love you too." That makes this so hard. I love Ralph as well. "Yeah, I get that. But it bothers me a bit that you don't want to be seen with me in public, especially at night. You still only go out with him. Tom, I hardly spend the night with him anymore. He struggles to be intimate with me because he knows I enjoy being with you more. But I still enjoy socializing with him. I owe him that." "Okay, I see." I felt my jealousy grow. It felt like Ralph was the one getting more attention, like she was going on dates with him instead. "But I enjoy being with you too. I'm not ashamed to be seen with you. I'm not ugly. You're actually quite attractive." "I know, but I'm not as good-looking as he is." "Don't flatter him. Ralph is the most handsome man I've ever seen. I know." Hearing that made me feel bad, but it was true. "Don't feel bad. I love you." "Yeah. But is it really necessary to still be with him?" "Yes. If the moment is right, I will not say no to him. I owe him at least that." "Yeah. You're probably right, but it still feels wrong. It hardly happens anyway." I took a deep breath. The long-term goal was what mattered most to me. But as she left our place to be with Ralph, I felt like my heart was breaking. I could only imagine how he must have felt when he found out about us. It hurt a lot. I stayed awake that night, scared that she would choose him again. I worried that he would finally get better at being intimate. I imagined what they were doing then if she was kissing him, if they were together in bed, whispering sweet words to each other. In short, I spent the night filled with worry and jealousy like I always did when she was with him. It was really wearing me down. I felt like a man who had been cheated on, and it was not enjoyable. A few weeks later, I couldn't take it anymore. She had started to stay at Ralph's place just 1 or 2 nights a week. It eased my pain a little, but it was still hard to deal with. I avoided thinking about how Ralph felt as he was slowly losing her, but I had to keep my goal in mind, and thinking about his feelings wouldn't help me. I felt ready to take a chance. "Tina, what do you think about us being in an exclusive relationship? We already are, right? Or are you seeing someone else?" "No, I'm not." "But you are." "What? I see." "Well, I don't sleep with him much, but if he wants me, I will go. I feel I owe him that much, and I still care for him. You knew from the start. I understand. So is it okay for me to have another girlfriend, too? What? No. She looked angry at first, but then calmed down. I don't know. You see, we have to remember that officially we are the ones cheating. I was married to Ralph, and I'm still his in some way. I hurt him while he did nothing wrong. I think I still love him. Yeah, I know, but it still hurts. Yeah, just like we've hurt him. Tina, you don't suffer at all. You have two men to choose from. That's not right. It kills me to hurt Ralph. I feel like I'm cheating on both of you. I feel unfaithful all the time. Then break it off with Ralph. You live here now. I can't. He still thinks we can get back together, and I still love him in some way. Great. Yeah. For a few weeks, not much changed. She spent more time out with me and even introduced me to some of her friends, which made me happy. But she still saw Ralph at least once a week. It felt like she was cheating on me, and it hurt. It was time for a big change. Call me selfish, but I decided to use what I had to win her over. It might not be fair, but too much was at stake. I knew she would have 2 weeks off soon. I guess neither she nor Ralph could afford a fancy trip, but she was starting to plan short trips with both of us. Tina? We were relaxing on my sofa watching TV. Yeah, she replied, not really paying attention. You have those 2 weeks off soon? Yeah, starting next week. Well, I have booked a little trip for us. Oh, you've booked something already? Shouldn't you have asked first? Maldives, I cut her off. Yeah, it was a little unfair. What? She looked shocked. 2 weeks, water bungalow, nice resort, all-inclusive. Woo-hoo. She hugged me tightly. I can't believe it. Tom, you're crazy. I've always wanted this. Seriously, Maldives? I know. You've mentioned it. I felt a little proud. I had definitely made the right move. The next night was intense and tiring. Did I feel like I was trying to buy her? Maybe a little. But that didn't stop me. This was too important, and I wouldn't play fair. I wanted to win her over. Tom, I can't wait for this. Oh, what? I had planned a trip to Hamburg with Ralph to see his sister. I see. Maybe I should cancel. Don't you dare. We'll just go see her later. It'll be hard to explain this to Ralph. These 2 weeks will be awful for him. Yeah, I know. I managed to look sympathetic, but she found a way to tell poor Ralph. I was just glad I didn't have to be there. After talking with him, she ended up spending the night at our apartment instead of his like she had planned. I didn't want to ask what happened. Even better, she didn't go back to him until we left for the Maldives. He probably wasn't happy, but I certainly was. The vacation was a dream come true. I was the envy of all the other guys there. We enjoyed great food, spent time diving, snorkeling, and we had fun together. I loved the relaxed mood after a good time together. We were snuggled on a small couch over the sea, a warm breeze blowing through her hair. Everything felt perfect, and I chose this moment to possibly ruin it. Tina, I've been thinking. Yeah? How about you spend all your nights in our apartment? I really like it there, but what about Ralph? I want us to be a real couple, just us. I want you for just me. She looked at me, her face hard to read. Oh, Tom, I'd really love to. But she still seemed unsure. Just do it. But what about Ralph? You need to set him free. He needs to move on. You're holding him back. She looked thoughtful. Maybe you're right, she said after a long pause. It's better for everyone. This constant hurting must stop. You have to stop leading him on. He still hopes to win you back, and that's really unfair. To my relief, she nodded. I know you want to let him down gently, but all you're doing is prolonging the pain. You're right. Wow, my gamble seemed to be working. I was scared she might decide to end it by leaving me, but instead she started to cry. But it's so hard. This really is the end of Ralph and me. We wanted kids. We wanted to grow old together. It feels wrong to leave him like this. Is it for fun? Oh no, don't think that. I'm not here just for fun. You are so much easier to love than he is. You care, you understand. You're kind and you're grown up. I love being with you, but I wouldn't be here if that was all I wanted. I really love you for who you are. I need you in my life. Me too. Okay, Tom. From now on, you are my man, my only man. You have my heart and my soul. It might have sounded a bit silly, but she had tears in her eyes, so it felt real. I was touched too, and with a shaky voice I could only say yes, without feeling awkward. I was glad I didn't see the end of things with Ralph. I truly felt sorry for him. Slowly losing someone like Tina over time must have been awful. She told me later it was indeed terrible. He cried, begged, got down on his knees, and promised never to see the other woman again. He claimed he never slept with her anyway. The sad part was that this last part was even believable. We had taken away his confidence. When Tina came back, she looked upset and brought her things with her. No, we didn't spend the night together. I just held her and helped her through her tears. So had I won? Yes. Was it easy? No. The problem was that she still cared for Ralph, and we had both started off in a dishonest way. Our relationship felt shaky. Most importantly, I still wondered if she was seeing Ralph behind my back. Did she miss him? What if he was better in bed now that their roles had changed? Sometimes I followed her, and to my shock, I found out she still met Ralph. I couldn't go to his place or follow her all the time. If she knew I was checking up on her, I might lose her again, so I could only see small moments like casual lunches without even a real kiss. But the fear and jealousy were there. What if she cheated on me with him? The thought was terrible. This worry grew when I met some people who thought she and Ralph were still a couple. I realized things had flipped. Now we were together, and Ralph was the problem. I was always scared that he would improve and become better than me. He was better looking and bigger, and she had said she still loved him. These worries were probably silly, but they still hurt. I even thought about them while we were together, and it was starting to take away my enjoyment. The worry was eating away at me. Things weren't perfect, but what could I do? Confront her? That might push her back to Ralph. No, better to keep things peaceful. She didn't know I was suspicious, and life was okay for now. Well, at least it was manageable. The issue was that Ralph had tried to avoid facing the truth while they were still together, and that had backfired on him. This thought was driving me crazy. After a few weeks of feeling uneasy, I could hardly take it anymore. "Tom, honey, what do you think about having a baby?" Wow, that was unexpected. "Tina, I'm not sure." "What? Is it because we're not married? I'm willing to change that anytime you want." "No, it's not that. It's because you're still seeing Ralph, and I would never know who the father is." There it was. The truth was out. I had shaken things up now and was waiting for her reaction. She looked shocked and ran out of the room. Oh no, had I messed everything up? After a few minutes, she came back with tears in her eyes. "I'm so sorry, Tom. I promise I'll stop seeing him, at least when I'm with you. Without me, I'm not into other guys." "What? Do you think I'm still with him?" "Well, kind of. You must be joking. I promise to only be with you, and I mean it. Yes, I've had a few lunches with him. I owe him that much, but I'm yours." For some reason, I believed her. "I'm sorry, Tina, but you have to admit, given our past, yes, I cheated. I have to live with that. But I never lied to Ralph directly. I didn't say I was seeing you, but I didn't lie either, and I'm telling you now, I'm faithful to you. I felt foolish, but I also felt a huge weight lift off my shoulders. We were both still carrying the guilt of cheating on Ralph, so you could stop seeing him? Of course. Do you think I want to? If you can, why haven't you? I thought you still loved him. Tom, we were together for a long time. Everyone thought we were meant to be. We were best friends and grew up together. I always thought I loved him. It turned out I cared for him, but with you, I found true love. It's not just about being together. With Ralph, I feel friendship and care, but with you, I feel deep love. So yes, I can stop seeing him if I need to. You win. I saw him out of duty more than love. I tried to let him down softly. I understand. Wow, what a relief. Don't you think you're making things harder for him? He might still think there's a chance to win you back. That must be tough on him. Yes, you're right. I knew that, but I was too weak to end it. Good. I couldn't help but smile. She was finally mine. I felt muscles in my body, loosened that I didn't even realize were tense. A warm feeling of happiness washed over me. Tom, can I see him every now and then? Just to talk, of course. And you can come too, she added quickly. Well, given what happened before, I'd rather not. I have to admit I'd feel a bit uneasy. But if you really need to, I'd understand. Thank you so much for letting me do this and for forgiving me for meeting him before. What else could I do? In our group of people who weren't very faithful, I couldn't blame her for something so small, could I? For the next few weeks, we spoiled each other a lot. We were extra nice during our time together, gave each other little gifts, and brought coffee to bed. I wanted to make sure she wouldn't think about Ralph anymore. As for her, I wasn't sure. Maybe she felt guilty or wanted to make sure I wouldn't doubt her. Whatever the reason, it was fun for a while, but it became a bit too much. After some time, we both calmed down, and our relationship became more relaxed and solid. One lovely Saturday morning, we were having breakfast together. "Yes, Tina," I said suddenly. "What do you mean?" "I accept." "Honey, what are you talking about? You asked if I would marry you, remember?" Her face lit up with joy. "Really? You'd marry someone like me?" "Tina, you don't have to keep bringing that up. We've both made mistakes. You might regret this," she said with a teasing smile. I just smiled back, feeling silly. "I'll be faithful to you, don't worry. I know." But deep down, I wasn't so sure. That's probably what she promised Ralph, too. "I will make sure you never regret this, Tom." 6 years and 2 kids later, I still haven't regretted it. We still treat each other very well. But I'm not naive. We both turned on the tracking features on our smartphones without even talking about it. Sometimes I quietly check her emails and phone. So far, she has stayed faithful. Our marriage started with cheating, and that shadow will always be there. Ralph has accepted things now. Unfortunately, he visits us often with his new wife and their little boy. We try to stay friendly, but there's always some tension when he's around. I notice the way he looks at her, and it makes me uneasy. Given our past, I do my best to keep her happy both in and out of the bedroom. Her unhappiness with Ralph was what made her leave him, and that's a situation I want to avoid. So I feel a lot of pressure, but as long as I have her, I can deal with it. Even with my lingering doubts, I'm starting to believe it. I've won my dream woman from a man who seems more attractive. But I know it came at a cost to my values. Was it worth it? Absolutely.